to The Last Cast, HBO's unofficial The Last of Us recap podcast. This show, hosted each week by me, Jack, and Andrew,
hello there.
We'll take a deeper look into the mega TV series event, The Last of Us. We'll break down, assess, compare, contrast, and have just a little bit of fun as we go. So grab yourself a cup of Joel's favorite blend, and let's get on with it.
Get on with it.
Oh, here we are, episode 9.
Better late than never.
Yeah, better late than never. Yeah.
As I like to say.
Yes, this week was... You know what? I saw that you took... All right, let me back up a few paces. Over on our Twitter, TLOU Podcast, I posted earlier in the week, I said, we're not going to be able to drop the podcast until late Friday night. We are recording this on Friday night at 6 p.m. So
Happy
it'll
St.
be...
Patrick's Day, everyone.
Yes.
Hence the green.
Yeah. The green slight little shadow over here and my eyeballs.
I'm always wearing green, though, see? It's forever with me in my soul.
Yes. So I posted earlier in the week that we wouldn't be able to drop the podcast until Friday. It's just been a very, very crazy week. Our daughter's birthday, traveling for work, family visiting. It's just been that kind of week, and it's still not over. We have a big party tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yes. So thank you guys for being patient. But as always, this episode will not have any spoilers for anything to come in The Last of Us Part 2. Now that we are at the end of season 1, we didn't spoil hopefully anything at all in season 1. I hope. I hope.
I think we have an unblemished record of not spoiling, to be quite honest.
I do.
Should be the family crest. We do not spoil.
Yeah. Let us know, though. Did we earn the crest? But yeah, so our drop schedule, from here on out, it will be whenever it will be. We will try to do all of our bonus shows maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. But we will still be popping into your feed over the next couple months, probably, with different shows, like one whole show talking about the season as a whole, then one whole show for the emails and all of that good stuff. So you will see us still around and about, but eventually it'll taper off until season 2, of course. But yeah, that's that on that. Our contact information, if you would like to follow us on the internet, you can do that on Instagram at TLOU Podcasts, on Twitter at TLOU Podcast, or you can email us at TLOUpodcast@gmail.com. And that's all I got. But we do have a few new reviews because you guys are just amazing. So, Andrew, let's talk about them.
You've heard my cries. You've heard my pleas. You've heard my cries. And you've answered the call. Yes. Let's just do this chronologically, starting with our latest, oldest review, March 8th.
Yes.
Sadie Doodle.
Doodle. I love that name.
Sadie Doodle Dandy.
Andy. Yes, I knew you were going to do that.
Sadie Doodle Doo.
It works.
You're some sort of rooster, perhaps. 5 stars says, I'm reading verbatim, SIC in brackets here. It says, podcast is put together so well, ! Which is wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
The review is as such. Let me try to editorialize it here because I believe, whatever. I just wish that the podcasts would be available to listen to at least at the latest 3 days after the airing episode, which fair, however, life.
Yeah, also fair.
That's all good, though.
Yeah.
That's all good. Thanks for hanging and thanks for having the patience for especially this. I think this will be the final 2 episodes we will have released on Friday.
Very late Friday.
Yeah, the days after the finale and whatever. Yeah. And the video versions of 8 and 9 will drop on the same day, which will probably be at some point this weekend, maybe Sunday, Monday at the latest. So you'll get episode 8 and 9 video versions at the same exact time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sadie.
Thank you, Sadie Doodle Dandy.
Trust me, if we could be on Wednesday or Tuesday even, like we originally planned, I would absolutely love that. Believe me, I'm with you. I'm in camp earlier the better. Unfortunately, the production time and life and work and having a family and,
Hey,
takes
petition
precedence.
HBO to get us these early screener copies, and
There
then
you
we
go.
can have our stuff done and over to you the day after the episode airs.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Actually, I'm going to petition HBO for that.
Please.
Next up, we have the music cue. The MUSIQU. The music cue. The music cue.
Yeah. The music.
But review title, It Is I.
Do we know you?
It is I.
Do
the
we know
music
you?
cue. I am the 5% of people who watch the show, become obsessed, and then play the game. 10 out of 10 show. Love the breakdowns, love the banter, love the tense feelings I get when Jack and Andrew vehemently disagree. Heart.
Isn't that great?
I don't like when mom and dad are fighting. Makes me sad.
It's so rare. Me and Andrew are just not that couple that fights that.
I don't know if we
often.
I don't know if we disagree about the show. I mean,
Yeah.
we you have your strong feelings,
Mhm.
and I can, I'm like, okay, whatever you say, whatever you say, whatever you say.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, the music cue. I love the presentation. It is I.
That's
That's how I read that.
Yeah.
Tis I. And then our final review is from listener, my plant is cooler than yours.
Best name.
Which, okay. I mean, I have some pretty cool plants. I have a cool plant. Well, this is a willow tree right here. Jesus Christ. That. And then this thing right here. That's a pretty cool plant. I have a bunch more out there. Cacti, Venus flytraps. Let's go.
Andrew's a plant dad. A plant dad.
A plant dad.
He's a very big plant
all
dad.
the cordycepses out here. Okay, here we go. Title of the review, I just love Jack and Andrew. Every Friday, I'm rushing to my Spotify to listen to you both. Please never stop podcasting together. The Last Cast and Wayfaring Strangers are the only ones I listen to. Well, that's high praise.
Yeah, thank you.
We fall right in line with a very specific subset
Niche.
of podcasts about your interests as hosts that work well together. It's like a hat wearing a hat wearing a hat. Like, you know what
I
I'm
love it.
saying?
And we did that.
Hey,
It's amazing.
I'm happy to be that for somebody. I'm happy to
very
be that
happy.
for somebody.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that review. Thank
Hells
all of you. Everyone who has reviewed and all the ones that we've talked about thus far, which by the way, this kind of all goes together. The winner of our contest, wonderful, wonderful listener. I'm not going to use their real name, but grumpy.by entered the big contest for season 1. Again, we will have a big ass a big ass giveaway every season. So our first one is officially over. Grumpy.by won Sideshow Joel, a t-shirt, and a PlayStation gift card. Already talked to them. Wonderful conversation. Wonderful human being. And but they were Aubrey S. Plaza. Aubrey's Plaza.
Yes.
That was the Grumpy.by is the person behind Aubrey's Plaza review.
That's
So,
true. That's true. See?
Yeah.
We didn't even know that until we reached out and did the, congratulations that you won.
It's amazing.
Great to know, though. Great to know.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Aubrey's Plaza. That's a series of syllables. It's very difficult to say. But yes, that's awesome.
Yes, very happy. Thank you to everyone who entered the giveaway. We will have more in the future. So, but congratulations, grumpy.by / Aubrey's Plaza.
Let's go.
Let's go. So yeah, we did all the intro stuff. We're just going to dive into this show. Andrew did not do his summary for the week. He told me right before we started recording. But can you just tell us what HBO told us about this episode, please?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Very descriptive. Pregnant Anna places her trust in a lifelong friend. Later, Joel and Ellie near the end of their journey. That's what HBO had to say.
It's pretty thin, HBO.
We've talked about that on this show before. The really thin HBO
Yeah, John Travels.
Hard Home. The
Cersei
episode,
Struggles.
Yeah, the Hard Home episode of Game of Thrones. It was John Travels, Cersei Struggles. And it's like...
What?
Yes. Those are two facts about this episode. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's good though. Yeah. All right, well, we are going to go into this, so I'm going to kick us off. But I will say, Andrew nailed it.
Vindication. Vindication!
There he goes. We were right about a cold opening at the last episode of this season, so nailed it.
It's the one thing I got right about this show.
That's not. Stop that.
All right, yeah.
In my opinion, every single one of these cold opens were phenomenal. And they enhanced and brought so much more to the story that I didn't even know we needed, to be perfectly honest. But this one was the best by far and away. And the fact that it was the cold open and then continued after the credits, also love that too. We'll talk about that shortly.
That was great.
But we hear and then see a pregnant woman in a yellow dress running through the woods. And this is Ashley Johnson, ladies and gents. We hear some infected screeches behind her as she's racing off somewhere, and she's laboring. She's in pain. She's grunting. That belly is ready to pop. But she stops and starts as she is going, and she even falls at one point, and my God, my heart just breaks for this whole sequence. But she runs and runs until she breaks through to a clearing, and Anna sees a farmhouse up ahead, complete with a silo beside it and a broken down tractor out front. Just keep that in mind for future people. Bursting through the door, she locks it and screams out to no one, "It's me." Nobody answers. She continues to labor here, and she's clearly having contractions. And we hear more screeching beyond the door. Anna goes upstairs here. And as she gets to the top of the stairs, she reaches down between her legs to find that her water has broken. This is amniotic fluid. It is go time. There is no stopping this train once it starts, people. And she struggles to get to the door handle, or she struggles to get the door handle open, rather, but eventually does so and enters, props a chair against the knob to keep the infected out, and then goes to the opposite end of the room. She sits down, kind of slides down, and continues to work through her contractions, and she pulls a very familiar switchblade. And at that moment, the infected barrels and bangs on the door. And Anna drops the blade because of her pain, because of being startled, like column A, column B, and then grabs it just in time as the infected comes and into the room, breaching the very flimsy locked entrance. And one can only assume that the door was just like on its last legs anyway. And it goes right to Ellie, its mouth tendrils trying to get to her and infect her, but thankfully she stabs it a few times until it is dead and lying on the floor beside her. And Anna grunts and struggles as she makes sure the thing is dead, but then we hear a baby crying, and there she is, little Ellie on the floor, wiggling around in all of her glory, really. But Anna looks to her thigh and sees that she's been bitten, and immediately reaches for the switchblade again and cuts the umbilical cord and ties it off. Afterwards, she slowly picks up her daughter and looks her over, and we see these beautiful, very macro shots, just like a beautiful depth of field, the lighting of her little girl's hands and her perfect little feet, and just showing all these wonderful attributes. And I mean, it's taking everything in me not to cry, but I did my makeup for St. Patty's Day and I don't want to. But
fair enough.
She eventually kisses Ellie's little fingers, and she just says hi and hey and just coos at her daughter. And it's so beautiful, and my heart aches and I'm going to cry.
Here it comes.
Yeah. And Ellie gets her name here. And we hear that as Anna watches her daughter cry, or listens to her. But she doesn't try to calm her or anything. She just kind of talks her, holds her out in front of her and says, "Yeah, you tell him. You fucking tell him, Ellie." And it's... I mean, this sweet little darling is just so cute. This is so hard. But after this, she cradles her tough little girl, holding her to her and talking as she does this. And then the credits roll, which...
That's right.
We're going to take a break and talk about this whole sequence. So let's go back to the beginning, and then I'll work my way to tears again. But hearing Ashley Johnson and her grunts and those sounds of pain and like, I mean, oh, Ellie, my Ellie. It's just like, you are my captain, my queen, and my goddess when it comes to this game. And that is all. I can't overstate just how amazing it was for her to have this role and to give birth to Ellie. She's Ellie. Ashley Johnson is my Ellie. I love Bella Ramsey. I enjoyed the show very much, but my story is the game with, you know, the core characters I fell in love with the actors that brought them to life. And having her in this capacity was the best way to honor what she did with Ellie and what she might do with Ellie in a future game.
Yeah. It was nice. Yeah. To put a fine point on it, that is the voice of Ellie from the video games. And it's her.
That clear.
And that is her I mean, in the video game, she's not using an affect that's her. She just uses her voice and she sounds exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it's very cool. It was just like a very cool moment. And obviously she's also an accomplished actor as well. So,
yeah, she is.
Very cool to have many of the original game cast come through. This was the capstone on the entire thing, which was great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Merle Dandridge returning for Marlene, Troy Baker as James, Ashley Johnson as Anna, and Jeffrey Pierce as Perry.
Yeah. What else could you need?
Yeah.
Or want, really.
Yeah. It's just wonderful. But so the looking through a window outside to see Ashley in front of the house is a very iconic moment. I cannot say anything more than that, but I didn't want to not talk about it because people who have played the games would be like, how did you miss that? You know, I didn't miss that. I just can't talk about its significance. This is a non-spoilery show.
Yeah. There are a lot of moments, for instance, the title screen of the game, part 1, when you start it is a window. Like a window. The
menu screen, yeah.
Yeah. So, and curtains billowing. We've seen windows throughout this series. The end of the Bill and Frank episode, for instance, right? Yeah. Beautifully done. Again, we see this here. The theme, just, I don't know what they're building to by reinforcing this necessarily. I mean, I have an idea, but it's certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Yes.
Whenever you see a window or something shot through a window, just note where we are, what we're looking at. It may be worthwhile.
It has significance.
Yeah.
And this next note, I wrote, holy shit, this entire moment, I cannot believe. I don't know what Bella or Andrew were doing while we were watching this, but I was sobbing from start to finish. Seeing Ellie born, like seeing Ellie birth Ellie, like I said earlier, is just not a moment that I was ever expecting to see. And Ashley, you are in a league of your own. I mean, you truly showed just thank you, Craig and Neil and everyone involved with this show for giving Ashley Johnson such a momentous role. Like truly absolute pure gratitude on my behalf, on our behalf, because it was perfect.
Yeah. I no notes.
Yeah. No notes.
Obviously. It's one of those situations where it's like, to a casual fan, somebody who just hopped on the show, what you're seeing is a great acting performance. Right?
Yeah.
And that's basically the beginning and end of it. Yeah. To somebody who has played the game, it is so much more meaningful, right? It's just the symbolism of the entire thing. You know? So, and it was, I mean, again, couldn't have been a better choice. No notes.
Yeah. Perfect. And I remember all of our speculation over on Wayfaring Strangers, our other podcast, if you'd like to hear more about The Last of Us, talking about Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson's roles. Who would they portray? And then everyone was like, well, we're thinking Ashley might be Anna. That could be amazing. And it turned out to be true. And it was just perfect.
The other thing that I would just want to note is that in the promotional materials running up to this point, effectively this is again, I don't know what the chronology is of the shooting order, but that infected, like crawling on all fours towards her was like very prominent in the early marketing materials. That scene.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's actually pretty bold.
Yeah.
Because if you are a person now, I kind of forgot about that. But if you are a person who is keeping track of like, I wonder when or if we're going to see that scene, and we get to episode 8 and you've clocked, hey, we haven't seen that scene yet. Then you kind of are, then it's safe to assume that, oh, maybe this is part of Anna's story.
Yeah.
And it was.
Perfect. Yeah. Good note. Because I did think of that. At the end of episode 8, I was like, we didn't see that chase, and that was creepy as shit. And I was looking forward to it.
You wouldn't put something that prominent in the
marketing materials.
In the marketing materials without having used it, at least in my estimation, especially because I believe they've been quite judicious with the infected. A lot of people say there's not enough of them. I think it's a good amount.
Well, we're going to talk about that too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So, but last talking topic before we move on to the next section, Ellie's immunity. So I want to just kind of sit and talk some theories here. So Anna was bitten right as Ellie was born. So the leading prevailing theory with all of this is that Ellie received just enough cordyceps via the umbilical cord to be technically infected, but not enough to truly infect. Because first of all, she wasn't bitten. Ellie wasn't bitten. And it's not like she got an injection from a needle or anything like that and was intentionally, this was something that happened through a natural process. So this is a little bit of like unexplored territory with The Last of Us, because we never really understood
why
Ellie's immunity beyond she's immune. But now we have this whole section with Anna. I think it's really interesting. From a scientific standpoint, I don't really know how to explain my interest, like in particular, or explain how I think this is possible, because I know just very broad strokes when it comes to immunity. Like our parents received vaccines for smallpox, for example. So when you and I were born, we were just born with that immunity because they were vaccinated against it.
Correct.
So now going forward, like our child has that, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
But Anna wasn't immune from cordyceps. So how do you pass on an immunity that the parent didn't have?
Through stem cells. It's quite complicated. I don't really want to get into it. As you all know, I am a doctor.
Yeah.
But this just might be a little too much for the layperson.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So,
speaking of, real quick, I don't want to get anybody too excited, but we have a wonderful doctor, a surgeon who listens to our podcast and offered to answer all of the questions that we've talked about thus far regarding like a lot of the medical questions that we've had along the way. So look forward to probably one whole episode dedicated to that discussion and the possibility that we might be interviewing them in the future. So
I just like the idea. And again, not to get off on a tangent, I just like the idea of potentially this person going into surgery, like they have their hands up and they're being gloved and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then they talk to the person who's on the table and it's like, things are going to be great. Don't worry about it. We've done this a million times before. Obviously there's risk, but I'm going to take great care of you. I'm the best at what I do. And then as that person's like taking the breath of the stuff, it's like, all right, count down from 10. And they get to like, they're like 10. And then like the surgeon, like in the operating theater, like puts our podcast on, and it's like my ass, like me showing my whole ass about something I have no idea about. And the person like falling asleep, like, oh my God, no.
Showing my whole ass.
I just find that visual, whether it's true or not, to be incredibly funny. So
I will say, I don't know if our surgeon listener listens to us while podcasting or whilst podcasting.
While podcasting. They are podcasting, listening to us podcast. It's real meta. It's crazy.
Whilst in surgery. However, when I was on a Star Wars podcast once upon a time, we did have a team of doctors at a hospital, I think in Seattle, that loved listening to us in surgery.
Yeah, why not?
I was like, what?
It is, yeah. I just, just
be
careful. I would, that's great.
Be careful.
If you're a surgeon and you listen to us, our surgeon friend right now, let us know if we're on in the OR, and if you listen and you haven't written a review, and that is the case, please let us know how many lives have we saved. Actually, think about it.
Yes.
It's worth noting.
Let's go with the optimistic angle here. I like it.
How many lives have been enriched truly because of us? By proxy.
Yeah.
Because of us.
All right. I'm curious. We're curious.
It's worth exploring, I think.
Yeah. All right. I'm done with that tangent. But yeah, I'm excited to think about that upcoming episode. So
okay.
It's coming.
We come back to the farmhouse though. This is an interesting thing. We have our cold open. Generally is a situation that is divorced from what comes after. But no, we come back to this same past. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We see the same woods that Anna ran through, only it's nighttime now. A group of 3 people with flashlights are breaking through the tree line, walking towards the same farmhouse we saw earlier. Hours have clearly passed here. The sun is completely down. The man tries the door. It's locked, so clearly someone has entered. Marlene realizes this and then leads the men to the back of the house. Right, we're gonna flank them. They enter through the kitchen and find a broken window. There's glass all over the ground. They climb the stairs very slowly. Their weapons are drawn at this point. Right, you can never be too careful, but they're just listening. They're listening for sounds. There's wind whirling and a little bit of a humming. There's like a humming sound. And I remember you and I were both like, is that humming? When we were, because the show's very tense, but it's like, who's humming? Oh, hey, you over there on the couch, please stop humming. Right?
Yeah.
But it's a woman singing softly. Marlene calls out for Anna very quietly, just a whisper yell. Marlene enters and then sighs. Anna is holding her switchblade to her throat, her own switchblade to her throat, then drops it when she realizes it's Marlene.
Yeah.
Marlene sees the infection spreading on Anna's thigh. Her eyes widen, and Anna says it wasn't their fault that they weren't there. Marlene says they were delayed getting out of the zone. Anna says the baby is hungry and needs to be fed. She didn't want to nurse her. Probably pretty smart because I don't know. We don't know what would have happened, really.
Yeah.
Is she already immune by this point? I don't know. Anna lies here and says she cut the umbilical cord before she was bit. And she puts a little bit of stress on before.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true, but she says it's true.
Mm.
Marlene stares in silence. Anna places Ellie on the ground, swaddled in her green jacket. Anna asks Marlene to take Ellie to Boston and find someone to keep her safe and bring her up. It's interesting. Please make a note of that.
Yeah, that she doesn't ask Marlene.
Yeah. A person we just very soon learn have been friends for their entire life, essentially, right? She wraps the jacket around Ellie after placing the switchblade on Ellie. Must have been pretty cold. I'm going to be honest. That baby probably would have been very upset about that.
Yes.
She wants Ellie to have the switchblade. Marlene says she can't do that. She can't take a baby with her. Anna tells Marlene that her name is Ellie. Marlene repeats that she can't. Anna asks how long they've known each other. That old card, we've all seen that card played before, and that they've known each other their entire lives. So she will pick up Ellie. This is Ellie saying this. This is Anna saying this. You will pick up Ellie and kill me, right? Anna begins to struggle with the infection. It starts to take over. She's, got some little body horror situation happening, but has enough presence still to see her daughter in Marlene's arms. Marlene says she can't kill her and then leaves the room really, really fast with Ellie in hand, right? Anna begs Marlene, asking again and again and screaming for her best friend to just do this for me, please. Marlene hands Ellie off to one of the men for the time being, along with the switchblade. She hesitates outside of the bedroom door for just a moment, orders the man to cover Ellie's ears. She enters the room super fast, pulls the gun, bang, kills Anna, one shot. It's just done. It's over. Ellie's ears were not covered. You had one job, guy. You had one job.
Yeah.
And then she begins to cry. Marlene goes to Ellie again and takes her and then cradles the baby. She shushes her, trying to calm her down. And then it cuts to present day Ellie, who it is weird. Like, it's almost like she's like daydreaming about her birth story, which we know isn't true, but it is like, that's how it was cut. But let's like pause here before we get to that.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. But going back to the beginning. So reminder, way back in episode 1, we learned that leg and feet, I believe it was, the time to infection or the time for the infection to take over a person is 12 to 24 hours before they turn. So Anna's bit on her thigh, so she has that window, thankfully. So the passing of time from whenever it was that she arrived to when Marlene and her men was enough time for her not to completely lose her shit, essentially.
Yeah.
However, Anna holding her switchblade to her throat, I think you could read this in maybe one or two ways, but I think the truest way or interpretation would be she was going to kill herself before she has the chance to fully turn and potentially hurt her daughter.
Yeah, that's kind of how I read that too.
Yeah, as soon as Marlene walks into the room, she thinks, okay, I don't have to do this. I can have Marlene do this. And there's that little bit of relief as she pulls the knife away from her. But I'm curious to know if there were any other interpretations out there. If somebody else had come to the door and it wasn't Marlene and her men, like, would she have just done it? Or I don't know. I think all in all, it was a protective measure to make sure that her daughter was safe from her.
Yeah, that's kind of, I couldn't even think of a different reading of that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It was really just like, because we've seen that infected, we've seen that you could take them out, even the more powerful type clickers, with a good neck stab, right? That will incapacitate and oftentimes kill them. So that's kind of what she was thinking, right? If she got to the point where she was twitching and losing herself, I think she just would have popped it in and hope for the best, hope that someone eventually came along.
Yeah, for Ellie. But in this same vein, I'm going to stay kind of in localized territory. But Anna's lie saved Ellie's life, just as Joel's lie at the end of this episode about saving Ellie's life did to an extent. And yes, like the outcomes were vastly different, and the means to get there also different. And we can't fully discuss like the ripple effect of Joel's decision, of course. But it was interesting that, I absolutely knew that Anna was going to lie.
Yeah.
When that happened and Marlene showed up. And I can tell you with clarity that Marlene didn't believe her. Just like Ellie does not believe Joel. So again, these parallels, these mirror sequences and moments from the past that, basically it's like what goes around comes around kind of thing. But I just thought it was interesting because I haven't really seen people talk about that. Everyone has always loved to vilify Joel for what he did. But and I'm not saying that people should vilify Anna for lying to save a brand new baby's life, because what would she have said? Truly. Like, no, I cut it after the fact, but like, just kill me, not her. No.
Yeah.
It's a parent saving their child. That's what it is. It's a parent saving their child. It's what Joel did. It's what Anna did. Yeah.
Thematically, I think what we're led to believe, what the show is showing us is, which is nice. Don't tell, just show. It is the danger, I guess, of unconditional love. the lengths people will go to protect something, even if it is dangerous and irrational.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very interesting, with Anna being her actual parent, who has spent a grand total of, what would we say, 12 to 24 hours with her, and Joel having spent a significantly longer amount of time with her, but being, essentially like a surrogate, but them still arriving at the, I know, but still, but both of them arriving at the same conclusion when push comes to shove,
Yeah. It's kind of like main character syndrome a little bit too. It's like you look at Ellie and you're like, why are you so special? Like what David said. What makes you so fucking special, kind of thing. But it could be Ellie, it could be Jake, it could be anybody. If it was any other kid in that situation and they were fortunate enough to have a parent bring them into the world and protect them from second one, as parents fucking should.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens in their life that leads them to this next person that becomes their adopted mother or father, whatever, that fierce protectiveness, there's nothing else on earth like it. There just isn't.
Exactly.
And that is the truest form. I mean, I joke around with our daughter Bella all the time about how unconditional love is frightening. I'm like, there's literally nothing that you could do that would ever change how I feel for you. Like, ever. And that's frightening. You know what I mean? That's a frightening statement. But I can't say that to anybody else, and that's, yeah.
What the hell?
Anyway, yeah.
I keyed that joke. I keyed.
But moving from there, so Anna saying Ellie's name out loud, like her name is Ellie. I broke at that moment. It's going to be really hard for me to get there. So
breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe. Roll your shoulders.
Yeah. This is square. Yeah, I got this. Big girl pants. Asking her friend, this is what you said was interesting. Asking her friend to find someone to bring Ellie up and care for her before asking the impossible of, I know we're best friends and we've known each other our whole lives, but you have to kill me. You have to do this. Like, this entire story is heartbreaking. All of it, all the time is just fucking heartbreaking. But I want to know why you said specifically that's interesting that Anna didn't ask Marlene to take care of her child, but rather to find someone to bring her up and care for her.
There are a number of things that it could be. I feel like that we'll probably actually never find out now because everyone involved is dead, right? So you are left to come to your own conclusion about this one.
Mm-hmm.
My thought is the Marlene we meet in this episode, in this flashback sequence, is probably still a Firefly. She's with two other people, right? But she's very likely not a leader of the Fireflies yet, right? Yeah. The one that we meet later in the episode is one of the leaders of the Fireflies, right?
Yeah.
And it seems pretty obvious to me that Anna does not want that for her child, right? It's actually probably not a great way to live or grow up.
Sure.
Because of the constant peril that they face because they're fighting for their cause. And it is funny that it didn't even seem to faze Marlene either. It's like when Anna was like, find someone to bring her up. It wasn't like, well, what the fuck? I'm standing right here. It was like, no, good. I'm glad we're on the same page about that because I'm not going to raise a kid.
She probably made that clear throughout Anna's pregnancy.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe even like, I can't fucking believe you got pregnant. Like that kind of tone, which says a whole lot. Like, right.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting to me. Like these two people. Well, I mean, two potentially, I think that might have something to do with it. Clearly they were still friends. They were still providing safe haven for her outside of the QZ, right? They were like well outside the walls of the city. And so that's really, I just thought that there was already this understanding that like, it almost sounded like I don't want you to do it. Like, I would prefer you not to raise her. If I had but again, unspoken, but that's kind of how it came off to me. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So she would just be like a kind of a guardian from the sidelines almost.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think there was no offense taken either by Marlene. So that also kind of gives you more, like, we just didn't need the exposition essentially of seeing something unfold when like literally 2 simple sentences covered everything in detail. And we can kind of extrapolate, like, Marlene was probably on the rise to become the leader of the Firefly faction. And, you know, there's some implications for part 2 storylines and dynamics of characters that are interesting when it comes to elements in this scene as well that we can't talk about. But I think overall it was, I mean, it's just a heartbreaking moment. It's like, I don't want you to take care of my daughter because either we've established you don't want to, or you thought I was stupid for getting pregnant, or whether it was a mistake or not, whatever. And I'm asking you to kill me. Like, so I'm trusting you to do this violent act, but not trusting you to take care of my child in the long run.
I feel like that's her realizing what Marlene's strengths are.
Yeah. And I think that's great.
Yeah. I didn't hate it. Again, like what you said is really there's just a shorthand here that I much prefer. And like we said, all of this is really speculation because Marlene is dead and Anna is dead. And so there's no way, and probably everybody else who was there that night, the likelihood of them being dead as well, just because they're Fireflies, very high, right? So there's no way to know what transpired at all, unless we find a letter or like a notebook or something later on, which, to be fair, could happen
for sure.
I love the ambiguity. I really do. I think it's fantastic.
I'm with you, but they certainly introduced Anna in a different way than to what she was in the game. She was just a letter in the game.
Yeah,
but what Marlene chooses to do by the end of this episode, I also think is another talking point to why Anna wouldn't want her child with her. Because Marlene is willing to do anything for the cause. And she probably knew that no matter how much she might grow to love this child, it still would not surpass the belief and the conviction in the Fireflies.
Yeah.
And a child deserves better, period.
Right, yeah. What is the most important thing? And what is Marlene willing to give? It was clearly not enough.
Perfect. So going back to Anna exhibiting symptoms, so she's starting to twitch a little bit, she's struggling it, she's fighting it, she's like vocally fighting it at one point. And this is indicative of the fact that she was not immune. And going back to what we said earlier, Ellie's immunity stems from this microdose through the umbilical cord. And Andrew brought stem cells into this. We know nothing about stem cell research. We really do not. Just what is in like the news here and there. Not from a practical like lab standpoint. We do not. Is that what we're led to believe essentially? That immunity from this virus, this infection, whatever, can only come at this like lightning in a bottle moment? Or, I mean, because then it's just like, oh God, the horror, the implications of basically just genocide by that point of like, mothers who are on the cusp of giving birth, getting an injection to kill the mother, and birth immune children. That's horrifying to think if that's the implication of where that could have gone. Had Anna told the truth, but thankfully she didn't.
I think they show us the sequence of events happening in such an order that is what we are led to believe.
Hold on, not genocide, eugenics, I meant, right?
Eugenics. That's correct.
Yeah, not genocide. Sorry.
But also, they were like two.
Yeah, that would still be a mass killing.
To breed a bunch of immune people. That is what is probably what happened. I think that we are led to believe that is indeed the case, right? And it could have been like like a perfect timing scenario, like cut a second earlier, cut a second later, things could have gone a different way in either direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'll say. That's kind of what I'll say. I like that. I don't always need to know the reason why someone is infected. Again, I'm of the mind that I do not need everything explained to me.
Sure.
Sometimes I like it better when I have to kind of like think of or justify why something might be the way it was. I've been doing it for 10 years with the game, right?
Yeah.
Right? So why is Ellie immune? I don't know. Why is anybody immune to anything ever?
Yeah, no, you're right.
We just watched I Am Legend not that long ago.
This is wonderful. Speaking of, we're going to talk about that on a bonus show.
There you go. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen the film I Am Legend, watch I believe it's the director's cut. They're making a second one based off of the ending of the director's cut, not the theatrical cut. And a lot of thematic parallels to The Last of Us. It's almost bananas. But in that movie and the book that it was based off of, the lead character just says like 1% of everyone, 1% of the population is immune, right? And there's like, we don't know why.
Yeah.
Including him.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's been working his entire life to figure out how, or post-pandemic, post-apocalypse life, to figure out how. That's very cool to me that he was like, I'm the lead scientist on this, and I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
It is cool. It is really interesting. And maybe in another life, I would have dedicated myself to it if I wasn't so fucking terrified. But
if you weren't so goddamn good at podcasting.
That's it. That's definitely it right there.
God damn it.
So Anna and Marlene being best friends all of their life, and Marlene needing to kill Anna. This is just a quick note. This is, of course, a parallel to Ellie and Riley's relationship. The outcome of that friendship and relationship ended very similarly. And I wonder if Marlene had sympathy for Ellie, knowing what she had done to Ellie's mom. So in that initial conversation where Marlene and Ellie are talking, and she even gives her backpack with her switchblade and everything. And, just like, did you think Riley was a terrorist? That she had this history in her head of, I fucking killed Ellie's mom, and Ellie's mom was my best friend. And now this young girl had to do the same thing. I mean, it's just heartbreaking down the line. So
yeah,
just wanted to make a note of it.
That's maybe some reflections of Bill and Frank as well. Although that goes the other way. That is one person, that is a death, two deaths, but also, besties for a long, long time,
Yeah. Well,
Loves.
best friends and lovers, like, to be clear, not just.
Yeah. I'm just speaking about the length, relatively, probably the length of time that Bill and Frank were together is equivalent to when we met Marlene and Anna, together. Potentially.
Well, no, because Bill and Frank met.
How old was Bill when he met Frank is the question.
I mean, it doesn't matter because they had a max of 20 years and they didn't meet until 3 years into so at most it was 17 years.
Oh.
That's not
right.
a lifetime.
Well,
but they made a lifetime together.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Fair enough.
All right, next section. So we are with Ellie and Joel. So we see Ellie looking down as she is seated in the back of a pickup truck. She's in the bed of a pickup truck. And off in the distance, we see Joel, and he's calling out to her, but it is out of focus. His voice is muddied as well. And she's looking at her hands, I would assume, before looking around at nothing, just a bunch of highway detritus and broken down cars. And he keeps calling until he gets her attention. And she turns and looks at him, and he holds up a can of beefaroni by Chef Boyardee. And he has this big smile on his face. And I mean, this is clearly a favorite of Ellie's that Joel has remembered from months ago.
Yeah.
And she just kind of gives this lackluster, oh, cool. and his smile falls like immediately off his face as he looks down at his hands at the board game he's holding. And he asks her if she knows anything about Boggle or has she ever played it. And she hasn't. And Joel said if she wants to beat him at something, it would definitely be that. And Ellie only nods. And Joel clearly knows that something is up because he's trying to drag conversation out of her. Listen, parents always know when their kids are being weird, okay?
Look,
but
it's a skill.
But he switches to where they're at, like locationally, and that they are getting close to the hospital. And she says, got it. And he takes off immediately after that, just kind of turning around quick and walking away as he packs his backpack with the game and the goods. And Joel's sort of watching her here as he pretends not to watch her. And it's Ellie's, like all of Ellie's moments and her movements are just, she's closed off and she's quiet. And as she stands beside him, he asks her to hold the rifle. And at this moment, he puts his backpack back on. So,
yes.
Yeah. And she does this and then hands it back when he's prepped to go. Again, not saying anything, not capitalizing the moment to like ask to fire. It was just one of those things. But they begin walking on the highway then, and they pass an RV. We're going to talk about that shortly or at the end of the show. And Joel talks about a guitar being inside of the RV, but it was all smashed up. And he says it's got him thinking. He hasn't played in forever and that maybe he should find one. And Joel thinks that maybe if he, does find one, he could teach her. And Ellie would be great at it. And then he asks, would you want to learn how to play guitar? And she, again, does not respond. And he speaks her name again, and she comes with a, oh yeah, that'd be great. But she's just, she's not there. She's hearing, she's just not listening. And they pass more rundown cars and semis that are overgrown with flora, just the whole area like we've seen all throughout the season. And they take an exit off to the right, which is, of course, towards the hospital in Salt Lake City. But before we move on. So the cut from baby Ellie crying and wailing and making all sorts of noise, which as a teenager, Ellie is a very noisy, talkative teenager.
Yeah.
To a very silent Ellie is an absolute haunting display of just how much that she's changed on this journey, especially recently. And now, yes, of course, I know that babies cry and teenagers don't just sit there and wail. I get it. Well. But it's very disconcerting if you have a very talkative teenager and then suddenly they're quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a polarization for us as the audience to see that not only there has been a significant passage of time from where we started to where we are now, along with where Ellie started to where she is now, but this kind of dissolution of her personality in the last few months because of the things that she's come up against. So did you find that to be as significant in the moment without thinking of what comes ahead for the story of The Last of Us, just in this moment and what we've seen thus far? Was that as hard hitting as it was for me?
Well, yeah, it has to be. And I think we have this, we establish Ellie as a talker right out of the gate.
Cathy, yeah.
Yeah, right from the first moment, and potentially at completely inopportune times when one shouldn't be talking, one should be quiet. She's, just going on, ripping on. So I don't think it was the interesting thing, though, that I took away from this whole thing was that this was clearly it's been ongoing. Right? Because the last time we saw them, there was snow on the ground, and that could be somewhat geographic, right? In terms of, there's snow in the mountains where they were, and maybe they made their way, but clearly a lot of time has elapsed, like you said as well.
Mm-hmm. Seasons are changing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And here's what I don't think. I don't think that Joel ever stopped trying. Like what we're seeing, right? Hey, Chef Boyardee, which is great. Yeah. Like a hilarious, gifable, memeable moment, right? Yeah. I think that was him for the entire duration up to this point for various things, like trying to connect and making, and like, that's his way of checking in effectively, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's all. It shows a reversal. Joel, the normally stoic, silent, just kind of grumpy dude is the guy like smiling big and holding up like a can of Chef Boyardee. I found that to be very endearing, very heartwarming, and very delightful.
Mm-hmm.
It's, as a way of like, look what he has become. Look what he is trying to do for this person.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do love that too. But there's that tinge of, it's kind of not tainted, but it's certainly painted with a certain kind of sadness though, because in the same vein that we're talking about how much Ellie has changed from this loud, talkative kid, she's now very quiet. And Joel has changed from a very quiet, somber, disconnected person to talkative, smiley, trying to, so like it's this evolution for both of them.
Sure.
But I think if I had to go out on a limb here, and I could be wrong, but if I had to, so I'm going to walk right out on that limb.
Here I go. I'm walking out on the limb.
I would probably guess that while Ellie certainly has been different as the journey progressed and a steep drop off after David, in particular, however much time between the winter chapter with David to the spring chapter in Salt Lake City now, she probably wasn't as quiet as what we're seeing here. I think she was likely super introspective and caught up in the moment because of how close they were coming to the end of this journey.
Yeah, it could very well be a combination of those two things, right? And not knowing the future.
Sure.
Like what the future holds.
So what will become of me, what will become of Joel, or
Right. And that makes sense why she might be. Again, it's cut to be what we're led to believe is how the episode, after we come out of the flashback, we cut to this Ellie. And generally just editing, like the technique of editing is if we come out of a flashback and we cut to a character who is silent, who is in this kind of daze almost.
Yeah.
The connection, the assumption is that they are, what we just witnessed was them reminiscing on those things, right? Sure. But she couldn't. Like, that's not possible to have reminisced about the moment of your birth, right?
Yeah.
But that just means to me that she may have been thinking about her mom, or she may have been thinking about Marlene, who she anticipates seeing real soon.
Sure.
So
it's a rebirth of in essence too.
Yeah. There's a lot. There are a lot of layers here.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something.
And I got to talk about my Last of Us hoodie real quick.
Oh yeah, The Last of Us.
Yes.
You did it.
I did it. For those watching at
viewers.
home.
Yeah. For the visualizers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. There is a somberness there.
Yeah.
But I believe that Ellie in that moment, Joel has been changed, what I believe, for the better.
Sure.
Ellie is experiencing a moment of.
I mean, it's PTSD.
A period of down.
Yeah.
Right. A down period that I believe with time she can recover and grow from and, work through. Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm not saying that, I mean, I don't want to just say that the quote unquote days that she in, like, it is a part of this PTSD that is becoming more and more real to her. I don't necessarily think that she was like triggered or tripped up into some sort of panic because of that. But I think it's just manifesting in moments like this because it's, her life is just overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right. No, and it would be for any of us.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. So that's it.
All right. So let's cut back to Ellie and Joel after we pocket our Chef Boyardee. We're walking through an alleyway. It is absolutely dead quiet, right? Mm-hmm. Joel looks around as they clear past a box truck. No threats. No nothing, right? He starts to say what it is he's thinking insofar as the plan to get where they're going, but Ellie cuts him off. She does a quick run through of the strategies she's learned from him over the past few months, or whatever time frame we're dealing with here. He watches her for a moment, and then he says he'd rather blast his way through the rubble because he found some dynamite back there. And she's like, what, really?
Yeah.
And then he says no, and he literally repeats the plan verbatim to her, and it's just very funny. And he teases her. He's like, I had you going though, didn't I? And she nods, her head as a response. It was very like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So next we see them enter a building with bright orange tarps hanging from the walls. Joel talks of the military dropping bombs. Like they were like specifically trying to destroy this building and none of the bombs hit this building. It's like, yeah. God, you hate to see it.
Yeah.
There's no way up to the vantage point that they're trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries circling around and he finds, it just says huge game cameo here. Huge game cameo. We find ladder. Ladder is prominent in game. Love to see it.
Yeah.
He calls to her. He says he'll boost her up. Ellie is kind of in this daze again. She ignores him. And instead she looks at some faded, burnt schematics. Instead of yelling or like raising his voice or anything like that, he just comes to her, right? Asks if she's okay.
Yeah.
Says she seems extra quiet today. She responds that she's fine. She's not. We see it. Joel knows it. It's all there.
Mm-hmm.
She apologizes and says, no, really, I'm fine.
No. He says, he's like, basically, don't apologize to me.
Oh, yeah. He says, no, it's fine. You know, that's all. And just wants to make sure that, she heard him, right? She does. She follows him over to the boost point. He gets her up in the position. He's like, 1, 2. She goes right up. She climbs, gets herself upright, grabs the ladder. And as she's getting ready to like put it in the position, something catches her eye, right?
Yeah.
It's a very kind of a slapsticky comedy moment or whatever, but like she just like lets the ladder go and like takes off out of screen.
Yeah.
Joel yells, God damn it, stay there, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
But we hear Ellie yelling from quite a distance at this point, like, you gotta see this, Joel, you gotta see this. Mm-hmm. Joel climbs up the ladder, right? But let's stop here for a moment. We could talk about this stuff.
Yeah. I thought, so Joel teasing Ellie was nice. I think this is a really simple, albeit effective tactic to show the growth to us of their relationship and their partnership and how at ease he is around her now, him specifically, just like look how far I've come kind of thing, despite her struggles. And we've talked about this a little bit, so we don't have to dive too deep into it, but he's trying, like Joel Miller's trying, and that's a huge step in the right direction for him. And I think that they did a really nice job of this sequence in particular and the following 2 moments of him being vulnerable and open. But of course, we'll get to those. But yeah, so from here, Joel reaching out to Ellie after noticing how aloof and cut off she is today.
Yeah.
So it's not just the silence, but it's everything else that we can kind of, just assume. Mm-hmm. It's not just necessarily David, but of course David is at the top of everything. But like I said, like, is it as a result of them being close to the end of this journey, given their upcoming conversation at the trauma camp? But one must wonder if Ellie is trying, yes, one must, if she's trying to make peace with everything that she's done because she views herself as having this great purpose. And I think for a teenager to sit with themselves and think, I've done a lot. I've come a long way for this reason that I have built up so insurmountably large inside of my head, and I have no idea how it's going to go. I have no idea how it's going to pay off. What if it fails? What if I did all of that and killed people and went through all of this and experienced everything for nothing? I think that is definitely, imagine having a thought process like that. All of us would be very quiet.
Imagine having a thought process like that, she says.
Yeah.
The person on this podcast most likely to have a thought process like
of course, yeah. I get very quiet. You know that. If I'm very quiet, something's wrong with me. That's how I go.
It could be both things. Like 2 things can be true, as always. We say that a lot. Mm-hmm. I feel like it is a mixture of, it's still PTSD, and then also think about all the opportunities up to this point where they got to a place and they were let down, right?
Yeah.
They didn't find the fireflies at UEC, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a bust, right?
This is a good point you're making, yeah.
So it also could just be her like tempering herself to not be disappointed again.
Yeah.
And I think that also might be something, right? It's not, what we can definitely say is it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It is it's the culmination of many, many things.
Mm-hmm.
We were told by Marlene earlier that this is where they are. Like, this is the hospital, right? And then, but along the way, we were told a lot of things that weren't true. So she has faced great hardship and loss on this journey. And I think also, part of it is just her shielding herself from potential disappointment. Because as we're about to see, she does allow herself a moment of like true joy.
Yeah. And Joel allows that moment too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And just another quick comment. So Joel boosting Ellie only for the ladder to be dropped. Real quick. Both. This carried right over from the game.
Yeah.
The boosting up, the ladder being dropped, her being pulled away from something amazing. The location is different in a way, but not like they weren't inside of this derelict building that was sort of bombed by proxy, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, but it was still, it was still interesting to see that. And as lovers of the game, we loved it.
It was great to see. To see. Very funny. Very funny moment.
So Joel and Ellie. So Joel tries to keep Ellie in his line of sight, but she's tearing off like a bat out of hell after who knows what. And she keeps calling after him to follow her. And he keeps calling after her to fucking stop and slow down. But eventually he runs up the stairs that she had just run up, and from here and there and everywhere. And then he sees it, and then we see it. And it is a giraffe.
A completely CG giraffe.
It was not a CG giraffe. It was a real giraffe. And I thought it was a real giraffe. And that's why people are so we are just so untrusting of like media now, because we're like, that giraffe looks fucking fake.
No. Get to the end and I'll talk about it because I think I have it figured out. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the music, thank God, the music was right. This was the same music in the game. Finally. I just have to, little zinger there. But he approaches the animal and then lays his rifle down first. And Ellie tells him not to scare the giraffe, but he pulls branches off and then hands them to Ellie as she asks what he's doing. And it's to feed the large beauty. And she laughs as she feeds the giraffe. And it's just this pure joy. It's just pure joy. And Joel is watching this the entire time. He's not really looking at the giraffe. He's seeing Ellie and her happiness. And her face is lit up and she's just reveling in the moment. And Ellie says, "This is so fucking cool," which she said in the game. And we love that. Before the giraffe eventually walks away. And Ellie asks where she's going and then races off once again to try and follow her. And she tells Joel to, come on. And Joel grabs his rifle off the floor, swings it around into his back, and follows. But hold on.
Okay.
So this precious, precious moment. One, thank God that they kept the music identical in this moment. First of all, thank God they kept this moment in the show. This was a very important moment.
They wouldn't, I don't think it, I think this was, it's sacrosanct. It truly needed to be here. And I feel like they nailed it.
They nailed it. They nailed it. The whole thing. Really, I literally have one of two notes and they're both just like joyful. I could just like cry and move on. But basically, this is such a simple moment in the game, but it was so impactful. It's so short in the game, just as it was so short in the show. Mm-hmm. But I'm elated that they gave this to Joel and Ellie, just as I was in the game.
Yeah.
And especially when you take into account all that we've been talking about with Ellie just being overwrought with her, God knows, I don't want to say regret or shame or guilt, but just her emotional scale is just weighted down. And then they have this beautiful moment of levity that just like raises her right up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of what we, basically an extreme version of the pun book, really, and what it brings to the story, that like lighter moment. But this was for both of them.
Yeah.
In very different ways, because Joel experienced joy through her joy. And I'm going to get upset because as a parent, there's nothing better than seeing your child happy and fulfilled and living in the moment. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what parents pay attention to.
Of course. Those are the moments.
Yeah. And I mean, the last comment just is the same as what we're talking about. Like, Ellie is Joel's joy, not the giraffe. I mean, the giraffe is wonderful, but like, Ellie is the joy and the light and the purpose. And that's abundantly clear to everyone by this point, I hope.
Yeah.
Because there's just nothing like that on Earth, experiencing that or seeing that. I will never forget, just a little quick side tangent. We're trying to keep this tight, but I will never forget. We took Bella to Disney World when she was 6 years old. And I'm gonna weep.
Weeping.
And I wept. We walked her backwards at the opening of Main Street with the castle in the background, and then spun her around. Can you talk about it?
No, I mean, we kind of get the exact reaction that you would think from a kid seeing Disney for the first time. I didn't have that experience as a kid. My first time to Disney was this time that we are referring to at Disney. So it was very special for me as well. But
yes, but your face lighting up, while important to me.
Wow.
But her face.
Everything before the butt doesn't matter.
I didn't say butt. I didn't say butt.
Yeah, because I said it. You just pivoted off of mine.
I'm a photographer, so I had my camera, like I was down. I literally have tears streaming down my face. Hopefully the light is bright enough to hide that. But I was like kneeling down with the camera on her face, and then you turned her around and she literally gasped, and I have that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
That's all.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Very astute watchers or listeners to our show will also know that they have been seeding this moment the entire show.
Yes.
There
with
have
little
been
giraffes.
Stuff. Yeah, there have been giraffes that have popped up throughout every. I mean, if you told me realistically that there was a giraffe in every episode up to this one, I would believe you and I could go look for them. Some were more obvious than others. Mm-hmm. In the second episode, there was a little giraffe plushie on the ground.
Yeah.
And
I think there was a giraffe in Sarah's room, but I can't remember where.
Maybe a giraffe in Sarah's room. There was a giraffe in the farmhouse room, if I'm not mistaken. There was a giraffe in the sewers with Sam and Henry. I think there was a giraffe on the walls down there. So there are, I mean, there may be some form of a giraffe in every episode of this show.
And notice how we didn't talk about it once.
We brought up that there was I know that you did, because I remember.
Damn it.
How astute. No. You very astutely brought up that it's just like there was a giraffe plushie on the ground in episode 2, like near the crater. It's essentially somewhere in that when they're walking through the crater. And Ellie makes a reference to like the moon as well, right? Yeah. Seeding themes early. I think that is all of those things led me to believe, like, yes, we are going to get this moment right here. All of these little things along the way are building to this, where we see an actual fucking giraffe.
Yeah.
And then my only other point about this is I saw a lot of contentious arguing about this fucking giraffe and whether it was real or not. And obviously it's a real giraffe. You've seen the behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
But everything else was fake, which was weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually it would be the other way around. We'll build a set, and instead of trying to get an animal, we'll just, fake it in post. I think we're getting to the point now, and this is potentially a larger topic, though, where our brains, our eyes, we're trained to such a way to see that there is something not quite right. That whole background was digital. It wasn't even stone in front of them, right? It was like a blue screen, and they filled in stone texture. So I think our brains just look at a scene like that and we're like, that's incredible. There's no way it's real. Right.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what is not real. And
Mhm.
I think it's the easier assumption is the animal. Like, oh, they just did like a CG giraffe or whatever. I guess it's actually probably pretty hard to get a like realistic CG giraffe. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that part is not my job. However, it's great. I think we got a much better reaction from both of our actors because there was a real giraffe there.
I
right?
agree.
We don't need that vista, as beautiful as it is that they're looking out on. We didn't need that as much as we needed that animal.
Mhm.
And that's what really counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's no notes.
Okay, so we leave the giraffe at this point, okay? So Joel makes it through the door and out onto some small kind of roof access situation. There's a family of giraffes, actually. We see that it's not just one, it's like a bunch of them out on a baseball field below them, and they are just moving together. It's very serene. It's very peaceful. It's like, oh, wow, this is great. He walks to Ellie, who is standing by the ledge. Joel asks Ellie the same question he did at the beginning of their journey on another roof. Is it everything you hoped for? It was a great callback. And Ellie replies identically with, it's got its ups and downs, but you can't deny that view. And it was very lovely. We love a callback here. They enjoy the moment just as much as we do because it's beautiful. It truly is beautiful. And Joel watches her for a moment before deciding something. He says he doesn't know where the hospital is, but Ellie says in response, like, they'll find it. And that's not really what Joel is talking about here. Instead, he goes in like a different direction. He pivots a little bit. He says that maybe there's nothing bad out there so far. Maybe there's nothing bad out there, right? But so far, there's always been something bad out there. That's like how he phrases it. But they're still there. And again, we have this little back and forth, this little tat-a-tat. He's trying to say there's risk, right? They don't have to do this. And then what else are we supposed to do? Ellie asks. And Joel says that they can go back to Tommy's and forget about the whole damn thing, right? Just here's an out. Like, we just had this beautiful moment. We're overlooking this scene right here, this once in a lifetime scene. Let's just go back. After a moment, Ellie says, after all we've been through, after everything I've done, it can't be for nothing. She goes on here, and that means that Joel means well. She goes on, she's like, you've protected me the entire way. And when they're done, they'll go wherever he wants, right? We go to Tommy's, we can go to a sheep ranch, we can go to the friggin' moon even. He laughs at this. Ellie says she'll follow him anywhere he goes. That's significant. But there's no halfway with this. They are going to finish what they started. Joel just nods. Ellie looks back out to the field of the animals for just another moment. Joel watches her, and then he follows her. So let's pause here. Again, just like we keep hitting these very huge beats, right? Lots happening in a little bit of time here.
Yeah. And this was my actual favorite line of the whole entire game. Is not one of the typical ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I ain't leaving without you. And when I have 2 autographs from Troy Baker, one for The Last of Us Part 1 and one for The Last of Us Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And my quote, but both of my quotes are actually from game 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. But this is a little side tangent. But when I watched him live signing that on Instagram, he was like, it's always interesting to me what people choose as their favorite lines to attach themselves to. He's like sometimes I don't even remember the lines that I said. And I think that means he didn't fucking remember he said that line, which is fine.
Right.
Because I had never, that's not a line that I have ever seen quoted, not in an Instagram post or a Twitter post, nothing. But it is my favorite one because it just shows you how far how deeply he cares for her.
Mm-hmm.
And now her saying, I'll follow you anywhere you go is basically the same fucking thing. I'm not leaving without you.
Yeah.
And getting basically two halves to come together. Oh my God. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful dialogue. It's overwhelming in a very wonderful way.
Mm-hmm.
But to go specifically to the scene, so repeating the same question and answer as the conversation they had on the roof right before Tessa's death was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So people, if you remember way early in the season, episode 2, I believe.
Yep.
They're standing on this roof looking out at the city and is it everything you hoped for? Can't deny that view. It's the same thing, and both of them are understanding that they each remembered it from the get-go. And it was this pivotal moment that builds and continues to build on how far the journey has taken them and us along with them.
Yeah.
So I hope people remembered that. If you didn't play the games, I hope people remembered that.
If not, you have been reminded.
Yeah. Ellie's lines to Joel about everything they've been through, everything that she's done. This is also identical to the game, but they branched out here with, like we just said, I'll follow you anywhere you go. And I don't need to talk, like I'm not going to repeat myself because I already talked about the significance of that. But the bond of Joel and Ellie, for me, has always and will always be my Last of Us story. And lines like this and what Ellie said in the show are like just absolutely encapsulate the lightning in a bottle that this story was from the get-go.
Yeah.
And continues to be.
Just correct me if I'm wrong here. I know. Sure. I just want to make sure I'm not misremembering this. That I'll follow anywhere you go. That's not in the games.
That's
right?
not in the game.
Yeah,
no.
That's what I thought.
Mm-mm.
There are back to back here, this choice and then another piece of dialogue that comes just in a few moments that were not in the game that I think now, like, I want in the game, right? Like, that's how good I think they are. There are many things about this show that I want thrown back. Like when they remake this game in 10 years, let's do this Bill and Frank story. You know what I'm saying? you know,
let's add 10 hours. Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Absolutely. Certain things I do want to be carried over to a future game, I guess, is the only way we're going to have that. But I have to selfishly say I would have given anything for Joel and Ellie to have turned around and gone back to Tommy's at this moment. And this is before when I first played the game. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. When I first played the game, that's the exact thought that I had. When he presents that to her, my gut was like, do it. Do it. Like, just go home. Please.
I got a bad feeling on this one.
Yes, I legitimately was Star Wars in it the whole time. I got a bad feeling about this. Like, so people who are unaware, how did that make you feel?
Right.
Let us know.
Whenever you're giving an out, just
take it. Just take it.
Whenever someone wants to remove a huge amount of responsibility from your shoulders, just do it. Just let them do it. So easy.
There's so many instances where that is wrong to just take the out. So No,
it's never wrong. Don't.
Oh my God.
Just take the easy way out. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh. All right. So we're walking through another tunnel and we come upon a makeshift trauma camp and we see aged medical paraphernalia from tables to IV bags and supplies of all kind. Everything is torn up and overgrown, and Ellie asks if this was Fedra, but Joel says no, it was the army. The military put these places up all around after Outbreak Day, or the outbreak. These are emergency medical camps, and clearly they did not last. And Joel shares that he was in one just like this, and Ellie asks if it was for Sarah. And Joel says it wasn't because of Sarah, because she had already been gone by that point. And Joel stops as they're walking and tells Ellie that it was because of the scar he mentioned on the side of his head. Or he was still walking but slowing down by this point. And Ellie says, the guy who shot and missed, going back to that conversation from episode 5. Or episode 3, excuse me. And that she figured that moment where Joel got that scar happened much later in his journey rather than, after outbreak, like immediately after the outbreak. And Joel says it was the second day. And Ellie jokes that the army people were way better at stitching him up than she was. And this is when Joel stops walking, and we learn that it was him. He was the guy who shot and missed himself. And he swings the rifle around, and Ellie also has stopped and turned around and looked at him by this point. And he sits down on a concrete barrier, and she joins him by his side.
Mm-hmm.
And Joel says that there is really no story behind it. It was just that Sarah died, and he couldn't see the point of being alive anymore. And he wasn't scared about this decision. It was resolute. He was ready. He was more than ready, he says. But when he went to pull the trigger, he flinched, and to this day, he still does not know why. And he's telling Ellie all of this and saying he doesn't know why, but Ellie understands why he's telling her this now. Not why he flinched, but why, the significance of him telling her this. And she goes on to say the cliche of, time heals all wounds. She's making an assumption here. And Joel looks at her and says that it wasn't time that healed his wounds. And we can read between the lines with this look that is exchanged that it was her.
Mm.
And Ellie understands. Damn it, this fucking show. Ellie understands the weight of this and partially smiles before looking away and nodding. You might have to finish. But her voice, like mine, breaks slightly. And she says that she's glad that didn't work out. And they're both upset here for a moment. And Joel says, me too. And he wipes at his eyes. And just kind of, she purses her lips as she swallows because emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But Ellie redirects. I literally can't see because of the tears in my
You got this.
Yeah.
Jackie.
Oh my God. Ellie redirects with that they should probably get going, and Joel agrees. And he gets off of the concrete first, and she watches him from behind as he walks away before following him. And Joel segues here with a fun little, you know what I'm in the mood for? Shitty puns. And this delights Ellie to no end, of course. And Will Denningston, is thus pulled from her backpack once again, called off the bench. And the first joke, people are making apocalypse jokes like there's no tomorrow. And he clicks at a response that is like, and Ellie's like, too soon? He's like, no, it's topical. And she goes on from here, and we get a space joke and a grape joke. And these are from the game, and it's just absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the fourth joke, all goes to shit. A smoke bomb is tossed behind them, and we did see soldiers or armed people walking up behind them that they did not notice.
Yeah.
And then the smoke bomb appears, and Joel protects Ellie and shields her as best as he can as they fall to the ground. But through this haze, after the smoke just fills the air all around them, he can see that people are grabbing Ellie as she calls out to him. So this did not knock her out, and they're dragging her away. And he calls her name and tries to stand up, but he gets knocked out by the butt of a rifle to the rear of his head. But before we move on. So again, I'm not going to repeat myself for fear of becoming too much of a drone on this front. But
before the but.
Yeah. I mean, I am going to talk about it one more time at the end of the show. So I'm just going to say this would have been a perfect opportunity for one or two infected. And in my opinion, and this might upset people, and I hope it doesn't, but it's comical at this point that there are absolutely no infected in this fucking world.
I figured it out, though. I just thought of it.
Like, there's no vines on the ground that they're even having to pay attention to. You would think near a trauma camp of people being hurt. I mean, I'm sure that they were, I don't know, were those machines to check? Like, that's the thing. This doesn't make fucking sense to me, Andrew. If those machines to check someone, if they were infected or not, I don't think that they were distributed everywhere in the immediate days following the outbreak. I see that as a couple weeks to a month or so in the future, maybe even longer before those machines happen. If somebody suspected that you were infected, they fucking shot you like they did with Joel and Sarah.
Sure.
Period. They didn't stop to take your temperature or anything. But in this instance, like around a hospital or a trauma center, there would be absolute signs of infection from people who lied, or somebody or an infected who broke through camp and infected a whole shit ton of other people and then eventually just, I don't know, sidled up to a wall and then grew out and then died. I don't know. But there's none of it present. And it's so fucking weird to me.
Look, I think that, it's clear that the Fireflies have a stronghold here. There's no Fedra presence either. So they may have just cleared most of this area, this little stretch of the city up or whatever,
And
There's
that I can follow.
There's also all these wild animals fucking running around. If there are giraffes, I think it's safe to assume there's probably a lion or two around.
Yeah, why wouldn't they clear? Well, staying with your same vein of clearing out the area, I could understand keeping a giraffe around or a pack or herd of giraffes. But wouldn't they kill the lion because that would be a potential threat to the guards? And if there were lions around, I don't know.
I think a lion running around is helpful, but for both it's chaotic neutral, right? Oh, there's an infected lion's going to kill that fucking thing. Oh, there's Jeff. Fuck. Well, sorry, Jeff.
I don't know. I think there's just there's holes that are easily pokeable, essentially, or there's like a fabric that's easily pokeable here.
There's again, it really comes down to it's certainly years. Let's say whatever happened, the Seattle, the where we are experiencing right now,
Seattle, not
Seattle. It's Utah. At least 10 years after. So maybe it was a medical camp, and there was infected and whatever, and then the Fireflies were able to move in when the military. Well, he said this was the army, right? It wasn't.
It wasn't Fedra. It was the army.
So they probably, at some point when they found that this place to be unmanageable or an untenable position, they're just like, we're getting the fuck out. Like, we're done, right?
Yeah.
And just left it. Fireflies move in, secure the area, do what they need to do in terms of they're fairly competent. They know we burn the bodies so that shit doesn't go sideways on us. And yeah, so it could have been over the past 10 years, they've just been like securing, right?
That's a good argument. You
just want to see more tendrils. I understand.
They introduced this concept of tendrils and this mycelium network, and we've seen none of it play out in like 7 episodes.
I know.
It's fucking weird. And it's disappointing.
It's the long game is what they call it.
No, I honestly hope so. But in reference to season 2 having more infected. But just spoilers for people who have not played The Last of Us Part 2. There are less infected in Part 2 than there were in Part 1, and the game is twice as long.
Yeah.
So why would they not? They should have extended season 1. That's it.
Look, HBO.
And that's what I'll say at the end of the show.
Look, they just didn't have enough money.
I actually did see commentary where people felt that the last 3 or so episodes, it felt like the show ran out of money. That's the vibe that they got from it, which I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, if they're just limiting to infected and actors and prosthetics and CGI, it's all costly, of course. But is it that big of a cost that would determined whether they were going to have infected or not? I don't know.
No, it's not that.
No,
and
I don't
know. And here's the deal, right? When they say it's X amount of dollars per episode, like X million per episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a fluid number. It's not like HBO's like, here's episode 1, you have $30 million, you must use every penny of it, right? If episode 1 by the end of production only ended up costing them $22 million, guess what? We have $8 million of surplus to go into the next,
and so on
to
and
distribute
so forth.
however we want. Like, that's kind of the arrangement. That's how that works.
Yeah.
So to say that they ran out of money, take the Bill and Frank episode, right? That is not a $30 million episode of television because it's so tight and contained, right? So I think they were smart about the allocation. Like, we had the giraffe CGI. We had like a bunch of very practical gun and people getting shot effects in this episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
The money is on the screen as far as I'm concerned. Like I felt no drop off of quality whatsoever. Like if you want to argue that they didn't put a bunch of infected, that's totally fine. But like, let's not argue that the show continues to like look and remain as a masterclass in filmmaking.
Yeah. Trauma camps. So these are also from the game, but there was an important conversation that they share in the game that they adapted into a different conversation in the show.
Mm-hmm.
If you would like to know what was talked about, I was going to save it for the spoiler section, but basically Ellie and Joel talk about Sarah very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very brief conversation in its exchange of a picture given to him of him and his daughter. And I can't imagine losing everything like that, essentially, you know, and they just basically took the meaningfulness of that and expanded upon it is what I felt they did in the show. So.
Yeah, no, that works great.
Yeah, the puns. So the great diffuser returns. And I love how they incorporated jokes from the game, of course. And they did this from various parts of the game, actually, into this one spot. And Joel being the one to prompt her for this is so important. Because kids, like, and we talked about kids a lot this episode, but kids essentially just want to be a part of our lives.
Yes.
And it's as simple and as beautiful and as big as that. Mm-hmm. They want to be a part of what we're doing or a part of what brings us joy that isn't necessarily just them. You know, what they love, they want to share with us. Because as adults, what we love, we want to share with people we love. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's the same. So it's the same for all the wonderful little people in our life.
Little people.
Little children in our life. Excuse me. So the attack... And not, this is another just ridiculous part for me. The fact that they did not realize they were being followed is laughable. And this goes back to the conversation just a few moments ago and a few episodes about, over the last few episodes about the lack of infected and this complacency that's growing with our main characters on screen. And this whole moment of them not realizing they were being followed and then attacked with a smoke bomb is like, this was bound to happen because of the little impact of hunters or raiders that they've come up to or infected throughout the season. This shit never would have happened in the game. It never did happen in the game.
I mean, yeah.
And I don't understand. I'm frustrated. Like I was really frustrated when I saw that happen because they never should have missed being followed. Joel was always so hyper vigilant of where are we? Let's look around, do this, do that. Like in the cutscenes, yes, of course. But me as a character, I was always fucking looking around too. Like, is there infected around the corner? Is there swivel? Yes. And it just really frustrated me that as Ellie's telling these wonderful jokes, these soldiers are just creeping up behind them. They could have been blown away and done the end of Joel and Ellie's story. Are you fucking kidding me?
You know, that would have been unfortunate. But it didn't happen like that. So we're safe. So when Joel starts to come to, we get ringing sounds. Room is out of focus. We know we are with Joel, and he is waking up from quite an incident that we just talked about. He's lying on his left side, so his bad ear is to the world, and glimpses a Firefly logo on a drum by his bed. Marlene's voice wakes him fully as she welcomes him to the Fireflies. To take it easy, right? Like, Joel, take a beat. The patrol hit him really hard because they didn't know who you were, okay? Which kind of feels like a little bit of bullshit. She probably should have let him know. Joel asks about Ellie. She's fine. Not even a scratch. That she's mostly worried about Joel. He asks again where she is. Marlene redirects. She lost half her crew and almost got killed herself, and then asks, how did you do it? Right? I think she said 5 people or something along those lines. Joel says it was all Ellie, but Marlene said she'd have been dead on day one without Joel, meaning Ellie would have been dead. Marlene says Joel is the one person she never wanted to be in debt to. They all owe him, which I guess for better or worse, maybe Joel's not a person you want to owe any favors to. Joel asks to be taken to Ellie. Marlene says she can't because Ellie is being prepped for surgery, right? Joel asks, what surgery? The medical diagnosis, okay? This is what we get from Marlene. The doctor in the hospital believes that the cordyceps has been growing inside of Ellie since birth. And it produces a chemical messenger that tells normal cordyceps that she's cordyceps. And that's why she's immune. So he's going to remove it from her, multiply the cells in a lab, produce those chemical messengers, and then give it to everyone. And he thinks that is basically the cure. This doctor's like, that's it. We figured it out. Joel deflates after this because he realizes that cordyceps grows inside the brain, in the noggin. And he knows what Marlene is saying. So she affirms that, yes, it does grow in the brain. And Joel immediately snaps back, says, find someone else. And there is no one else. We know this. They didn't tell her, because they didn't want to cause any fear. Joel reacts from the gut pretty badly and demands to be taken to Ellie right now. He gets knocked down to the ground by a soldier in the room. There are two guards standing watch over him. Joel begs at this point and says she doesn't understand. Marlene, you don't understand. Marlene counters by saying that she was there when Ellie was born and that she promised to save Ellie. Okay? And then goes on to say she's the only one who understands. Marlene is the only one who understands. So Marlene apologizes after that and says that she has no other choice. Joel looks up from the ground and says that he does, meaning, I have another choice, though. Marlene orders her men to walk Joel out to the highway, leave him there with his pack and Ellie's switchblade, and that if Joel tries anything, shoot him. Joel is pushed from the room, now kind of on his way out of the hospital. And I don't know if y'all saw the look in Joel's eyes, but at this point, things weren't looking good for the Fireflies. That's all I'll say.
No, they don't get better either.
Yeah.
So we're going to spend some time on this particular
Temper
topic.
this, okay? And you temper, all right, listeners, Jack, temper, okay? You have knowledge that people don't necessarily have.
No.
Right?
I'm not looking ahead at all. This is all based on what we were shown in the beginning of the series.
Okay.
And the culmination throughout.
All right.
So this
fair
is,
enough.
yeah. So Marlene starts off amenable talking to Joel, or appears to be amenable before it all spirals out of control. This is fact. But there's so much to talk about here that I literally had to break down this whole part into 3 separate talking points.
Okay.
So the first one is this piss poor explanation of Ellie's immunity given by Marlene, or even the lack thereof. It was more the chemicals. So Ellie's immune basically because cordyceps thinks that she has cordyceps, which she does, and therefore she's already infected, which she is, thus she cannot be infected.
Mm-hmm.
What?
It's right there. It's all right there.
It doesn't fucking make sense. I know from a logical standpoint, yes, it makes sense. But when you go back to the beginning of the fucking show, and this is where my biggest problem with this entire explanation of what the Fireflies wanted to do and why I think in the game they were already on a foundation made of sand, and now in the show it's like the fucking hurricane has blown through at this point. Because 2 cold opens told us that there is no cure, that if this does mutate to humans, we're doomed.
Okay.
And then an epidemiologist who was present when this happened inspected a woman who died because of the infection and was thus killed because she was rabid, is laying on the table, and the doctor runs out and just says, bomb. That's the only thing. We have to fucking eradicate ourselves. Otherwise, this is going to eradicate us. There is no cure. There's nothing to be done. And now, fast forward from episodes 1 to 2, all the way to episode 9, and we see Ellie's birth, and we can kind of jump to a conclusion that her immunity has something to do with the very slight amount of cordyceps she received via umbilical cord before it was cut.
Yeah.
When her mom noticed, to the hospital where cordyceps recognizes cordyceps because cordyceps is present in a body with cordyceps. Therefore, they can't get cordyceps infection. Are you fucking kidding me?
Okay.
No, you cannot introduce a whole network, a whole lore of bringing real world mycelium, nature, and practices that are fact, irrefutable fucking fact, and then present two different scientists saying factual things, and then a bunch of podunk non-doctor doctors in a rundown derelict hospital saying, well, yeah, we think it's because, she already has cordyceps, so she can't get cordyceps. So we're going to extract it and then reproduce those chemicals and then put them in people so that are you kidding me, Andrew? Are you serious?
Look, I didn't write this, first of all. Here's my read of it, though, if this helps at all.
Sure.
I believe that potentially that this doctor sounds like it's just a guess, right? Mm-hmm. There is no real explanation for this to him, and it just feels like a guess. So everything they're hearing is just maybe, right?
Maybe, yeah.
There's no way to know that is truly the case. And for the record, I believe so. Here is a fact that has been shown to us on the show, and that is that what they're saying about Ellie is cordyceps recognizes cordyceps and it doesn't attack or whatever.
Yeah,
so if we followed that logic to its logical conclusion, then the infected would just ignore her because they don't attack each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would just... Now, that would be interesting. That would actually be very interesting if, Ellie could just walk freely among them and then they didn't bother her at all. That would be actually pretty cool. But that's not the case.
That's not the case. They still try to fucking bite her.
That's right. And so my thought is that this doctor is wrong because we have an overwhelming amount of evidence front-loaded towards us. Then we have evidence presented throughout the show. So my thought is that this doctor is just talking out of his ass. It's just a hypothesis at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think the show, again, you might want to take it at gospel or whatever. And not you personally, but anyone listening, but the overwhelming evidence just suggests the opposite of that is what this doctor is saying is indeed not the case.
Yeah. I on Wayfair and Strangers, we talked about the doctor, and basically, I'm like, it's a joke. The whole thing is a joke to me. It always has. Even playing the game, I was like, my brain, upon finishing the game the first time, I was like, are you fucking... that was a non-decision. People who were upset at Joel and they're like, oh, he doomed humanity. No, he didn't. Humanity was already doomed. We did that to ourselves. Third or 45th point of view, point that I'd like to make is, okay, how are they going to distribute it? How are they going to mass produce it? What kind of hardware do they have? What kind of scientists and doctors and virologists and epidemiologists and mycologists? You have to be goddamn kidding me. And that has always been an irritant, and it's an irritant talking about the game too. So this isn't just a show. And I know that a lot of people have written in on our other show where they're like, you just have to believe that in this world it'd be possible. And I'm like, no, that's not an argument, because everything else in this, especially now in the show, they literally brought real science into this and said, we are doomed if this happens. End of story. So now all of a sudden, I legitimately was like, okay, I had my reservations at the beginning of the show, and I was like, I have my vindication, from Wayfair and all the not attacks, but the commentary I've received over there where people are like, I think you're missing the point. But I think the point is that they brought real world science into this and said this can't be changed. Nothing can be done. But Ellie is such a unique situation. Her immunity exists only for her.
Right.
Like this can never and would never ever be reproduced on a mass scale. And my other argument is the Fireflies would have immediately weaponized it and turned it into a fucking, the whole world would have been doomed regardless. It already was. But I have such an issue with the lack. It was so anticlimactic. I think that's the thing. Because how many times did you say when I was like going on and on about the scientist and the cold opens on 1 and 2 and I feel vindicated, and you were like, well, maybe by the end of the show we're gonna figure out what they're gonna do, and I'm like, okay, then I'll change my story, I'll change my song. And now here we are at the end of the season, and that was the flimsiest, weakest explanation for justifying the killing and murder of a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also don't believe that that was the point of it.
Which part?
I think the larger theme, and it is explored throughout this entire episode, was like, let's assume we are Joel in this scenario, and the decision, the non-decision, well, whatever we want to call it, the decision is presented to him that we could save Ellie or we could save the world. And we're just going to give that black and white. It's just going to be that black and white.
Mm.
Joel picks saving Ellie. It's like, fuck the world.
No, I know. That's the whole point of the divisiveness that everybody goes on and on about with the end of episode or part 1. And people have been talking about this for 10 years now. Did Joel do the right thing? And it's like, yeah, he did.
If you get into the weeds of it, then if you start to ask just the 2 more questions beyond that first black and white answer, right? I think the answer unveils itself.
Yes, but that's what I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about all of the all of the conversations we've had about how you were like, because I was like, I don't really like the whole mycelium network thing that was introduced. I think they explained things that they didn't need to explain, and then by the end of the season, they couldn't pay it off. And that's exactly what fucking happened. And I told you that 7 weeks ago, where I was like, we didn't need any of this network mycelium shit, and then there's no cure. I mean, was it awesome to have those 2 cold opens? Absolutely. They were some of the best parts of this series by far. But then they introduced this whole lore about about cordyceps and, how it communicates to each other. And then they completely got rid of all the infected after episode 5. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of the show, Ellie is immune because she's immune. Like, what? That is really, really, it's pissing me off. And I'm glad that we took 5 days to get to this point. And I really hope that I don't upset people. I'm sure I will upset people who loved every part of this. And I'm happy that you did. I can't stress this enough. I wish that I did too. But I think they over-explained too early in the beginning of the show. And then they cut the elements that they were trying to explain. And then they couldn't answer for themselves by the end of season 1. And it was disappointing.
I think I'm not understanding what you are.
You have to put down Joel's decision. I'm not talking about that. No.
I'm not even talking about that. So I just take everything up to this exact point in the hospital as reliable, provable information, and that the doctor is unreliable as a character.
I'm talking about us as viewers of the show.
Right. I'm not.
They paid off nothing from the first 2 cold opens. And then when they introduced the mycelium network and started talking about how it just does all these things, then suddenly the infected vanish. They're nowhere to be found for 4 whole episodes. Sure. And then we get to the end and all of there is no cure. There is no this. It can't be. We can't reproduce that. We can't this. And then we have Ellie. She's immune because she's immune and cordyceps doesn't infect itself because it's already infected. And we want to take that from her and then make a cure. What?
Well, that part of it, there are all like, okay, definitively, yes. But I would counter with there are no definitives in science, right? Given the knowledge that they had.
There are certainly definitives in science. What are you talking about?
What's a definitive in science? I mean, okay, so like
gravity.
Gravity. Kind of, but then you can defeat it by just like just beat gravity. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. What I'm trying
from
to
an airplane without a pack on and defeat it.
It could fall into a multiversal wormhole and end up somewhere else.
That's just science fiction then.
Or maybe it happens one time. I don't know. There are exceptions to every rule, of course.
I don't think every rule, no.
A scientist could not have predicted that this very specific turn of events that led to the birth of Ellie, because they had no previous knowledge of a disease like this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Based on all of the information they had at their disposal up to that point, there was never a person who was like born of a parent who had become infected. Does that make sense? They were working off of a limited data set, is what I'm.
And that further proves how dumb their decision making was, in my opinion. You have this one person, this one out of whomever is left, many millions of people or a million people in the world. I don't fucking know. I don't care.
Sure.
But you have this one person left, and what do you do with her? You want to fucking kill her. Did they never hear of the word biopsy, Andrew? Does that not exist?
It's possible they haven't.
It's just
it's 20 years.
I have such an issue, and I've always had an issue with this when it comes to The Last of Us. And for everyone at home, we're vehemently disagreeing. But I don't want to be divisive, but I just think that it's worth talking about, because all of the amazing things that this show has done, I don't think it paid off well in this particular moment. I really don't. I think this was the weakest moment of the entire season by far.
So and just to clarify, and because again, I tend to, you believe that the presenting of additional information that we didn't get in the game
hurt the overall story.
Hurt the story, even though the game and the show effectively had the same ending. Yeah. They didn't over-explain the reasoning, right? In the game, is what I'll say.
Yeah, and the conversation between Joel and Marlene in the game was, they think they can make a vaccine, Joel. A cure.
Right, they just kind of, it was more of a
but it grows all over the brain. And she's like, yeah, it does. And then he's like, take me to her. And all of the rabidness starts. That's all we needed. They hurt themselves by giving us additional information and leading up to some sort of payoff because of those two cold opens that did not happen. That's what I'm trying to say. In all of this going back and forth, they should have never done that if they didn't intend to actually have a scientific, believable explanation for what this doctor and the team of Fireflies wanted to do with Ellie to warrant them killing her. When people listening at home who haven't played the game, rather, in this moment in the hospital, it is a little bit quicker in the game because, Joel comes to, they have this little talk. Marlene's like, I'm the only one that knows, because I've been there since she's been born. I knew her mother, blah, blah. That's all similar. But then they think they can find a vaccine, a cure, Joel, a cure. And he's like, but it grows all over the brain. She's like, yeah, it does. And then no exposition needed. He understands what they're fucking saying. And he goes into Joel mode when he's like, take me to her. And then she basically orders her men to march him out of the hospital. And in the game, she didn't even give him his fucking backpack. He walked past his backpack but that's how quick that conversation was. There was no explanation about, we think we can do this, and the chemicals recognizing that, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, none of this makes sense with what happened by the scientist in the beginning of the show. that was not paid off whatsoever. This is all like, it's literally junk science. That's what it feels like. And they're just like shots in the dark. And they have this one shot that they can take in pitch black, and they're going to fucking kill Ellie, who could potentially present a miracle cure. Because that's all this is. It would be a miracle, first of all. And how fucking often do they happen? Let's be real. I'm getting really hype and upset about this because I'm like, this was so unbelievable. I couldn't believe that they did all of that work, and so many people were like, oh, you just wait, Jack. You just wait until they tell you exactly how they're gonna do it. And I'm sitting on the couch like I'm fucking waiting. Got nothing.
I think the science in the front seemed sound to me.
That's what I'm saying.
And made it scarier.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
Then
what are you not understanding?
Okay, you're fine up to episode 8 with everything that's been presented so far, science-wise.
No, that's my point. I don't like the mycelium network. I don't think they needed to introduce that. I think it makes things slightly more spooky, but then they got rid of the infected. So what fucking scary or spookiness or fear am I supposed to have when none of that exists? None of the tendrils are on the ground.
So there's a couple, okay, so we're dealing with like a couple different things here.
They just dropped the ball. They introduced so much early on, and then all of it disappeared by the end.
Sure. And I have no, I feel differently about it, right? But that's okay.
Well, say how you feel. It's a podcast. I want you to.
No. I mean, I enjoyed the ride that we had. I thought that there was, the more interesting adversary in a post-apocalypse to me is always the human element, right? Again, I've said this all the time. There will be entire episodes in a row of The Walking Dead with no zombies or just one, and you're like, yeah, that was great, and that's okay, right? Like they're there. It's not like they're saying like the infected aren't there. We're just not dealing with that, and I feel like they really picked and choosed what they wanted when they wanted to highlight them. And of course, over the course of the game, we run into a lot more infected because we're with these characters. A lot of it is combat focused, right? It is you overcoming these things.
Yeah. I need to make it clear that I agree with you that man, as a whole, mankind, humankind are the greatest threat in any property, in any TV show, in any movie, fucking music, whatever. It doesn't matter. A play, Broadway, go to fucking New York and see something. Man. People are the worst. Yeah. But I have a big problem with introducing elements and then basically, to be crude about it, blowing your load too early. That's what happened. Andrew, there was not a single infected that they came up against beyond Kansas City. That we saw for sure. But right? How am I to extrapolate? They don't talk about it. They don't even mention it. It's all what the fuck cure are we supposed to be fighting for when we don't even see the infected? I think we saw a fair amount in the first episode. We were literally burning bodies of Oh, so they're only on the East Coast then. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the situation. That's all. Okay, we just disagree about this. And that's fine. Fine. Yeah. That's, there we go. Yeah. We're not fighting, people. This is I actually really enjoy this conversation. Of course you do. I know. Conflict. I'm okay with a long game. I'm okay with it. I'm okay if they set this stuff up and we didn't see an infected for 8 episodes, but then like season 2, like, oh, we're in. That's cool. Right? I don't know. I just assume that they're out there always. We don't have to engage with them all the time. I don't need to see my heroes in danger in order to realize that they are in danger. I know what you're saying. And I agree with you. But why? I don't understand. Why not? Oh my God, the problem is if they fucking acted like they were out there, then I would believe it more. Joel literally has his rifle sling on his fucking back the entire time. And they get jumped by the fire. The fireflies jumped them. Joel, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?
He was distracted. He was in a happy moment with Ellie.
Yeah, well, that's not how it plays out in the game. And that was the other thing.
This might be it. This might be I keep saying this is where the friction comes from. But that's not how it is in the game. The game. That's not this for me. That's not that. Those two different. It's too different. It's too.
I know, and I've been trying very hard to separate that out. But when you look at how well it worked, so people at home, Joel was not distracted. Okay. Long story short, there was a swimming element and a water element to the game that was not present at all in the show. In the game, Ellie could not swim. So there were pallets. He would have to, take her from one area to the next, blah, blah, blah. There was this rushing rapids in a tunnel sequence. They fall in. Ellie gets knocked out. He tries to save her. Then while he's trying to save her life, somebody sneaks up on him, knocks him out. But they called to him twice, like, put your hands up, hands up. And he's like, she's not breathing. He knew they were there, but he was focused on saving her fucking life. She was knocked out. The other point I have with this episode is that they kept Ellie awake. And we're going to get to that shortly. But my next talking point, because I said I had 3 talking points under this one umbrella. We got through one in 20 minutes.
All right, we're going to blow through this right now. Here
no,
we go.
We're not blowing through nothing.
The answer is no. Next.
So the non-consistent or the non-consent issue between the doctor and Marlene, etc., not informing Ellie of their decision to take her life.
Yeah.
So this, I'm going to put the game down. No, I'm trying to try not to reference the game anymore.
We'll see.
But Ellie was awake in the show when they took her to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So why? We can assume, because based off of what Marlene said, she doesn't know anything. She's not scared. There's no fear. It's fine.
Yeah.
So right there, her and the doctor removed consent from Ellie. They didn't ask her if they could do this. They didn't tell her what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what did they tell her, number one, to get her to get on that table and go under? So they fucking lied to her.
Sure.
To just be like, oh, we're going to run some tests. Get the saw. And so that right there, fuck you, Marlene. And then Doomsday Dave, our good friend Doomsday Dave 3D, brought up a really good point where he said, basically, let me open the conversation actually, because I said I'm going to talk about this today on our show.
Okay.
And he's like, I've been trying to think of why they would let her stay awake when they get captured, meaning when Joel and Ellie get captured. And the only reason has something to do with part 2. However, basically, in essence, wouldn't Ellie have gone to sleep or under on the table knowing that that basically Joel was telling a lie from the get-go? We get that sense that she thinks that Joel's lying to her, of course, but wouldn't Marlene tell her enough information in the way of, you're the only one we've got to study? And then she gets in the car with Joel and it's, oh, there's dozens like you. They stopped trying. They stopped looking. I think them keeping Ellie awake was a mistake. I think that's going to cause a lot of weird narrative issues in part 2. And I think, again, I can't talk about the game or part 2, but when it comes to how Ellie feels towards Joel at the end of this episode, she's seeking reassurance for something she already knows is true. And then when he lies to her, she's like, well, what else am I going to do in this moment? I have to accept it until I can't, essentially. And that's what she does in the game. But I'm very curious to know what happened in the hospital while she was awake and what they told her and essentially lied to her about. Because what's the lesser of two evils there? Joel's lie or Marlene and everyone else at that hospital?
Fair point. I don't know. I assume that they're probably just like, we're going to run some tests,
No, but I'm talking about before that. Not the consent issue, because that's a thing all unto itself, which I think is just absolute bullshit. And
Sure.
I'm just not a Firefly fan. I never have been. But I'm talking about is it possible that they said to her, "You're our only shot. You're all we've got. We have to run these tests." Because you remember, okay, I'm going to the game. She said, "I had so many questions for them. Why did you take me out of there?" That line did not happen in the show. Joel filled in the gaps without her prompting him by saying, "Oh, we were attacked by raiders. I had to get you out of there." And people died. So she's expecting a lot of people to have died. She's assuming that Marlene died by raiders, not by Joel. So she's already accepting that something really went wrong at that hospital. That's not what happened. And I don't understand why they kept her awake. I don't get it.
I think there's the potential for that to be revealed.
Undoubtedly.
So, because it would be nothing to have Merle Dandridge come back for a cold open.
I agree. Yeah, that would be
Ellie
great.
is,
like sitting on the table, but there's another weird question. Damn, Ellie in the car says, "Where are my clothes?" So did they knock her out while she was fully dressed and then change her to kill her? I don't. Things are not doing this.
You go in, right? You say you're in a car accident.
Sure. You go in fucked up in your clothes.
You go fucked up in your clothes and you wake up and you're in a hospital gown. We take that to be a truism because we've seen that happen on television. Maybe it's happened to you personally. Maybe that has happened to somebody We know that is the procedure for being in a hospital type situation. Maybe Ellie doesn't.
Okay, but she was awake.
Right. And they were like, "Here, take this."
Why?
Give her a little medicine that knocks her out. And then they're like, we got to go now. If she says no, we got no,
I don't know. I just think there's a lot of, and the thing is like, I genuinely like really enjoyed this show, but they're just talking points. And I think that they need to be talked about. And that's why I'm here. That's my job. But
job.
Yeah. Okay. So third issue. And this is more of a nitpicky thing, but I always pissed me off in the game. And I mentioned to you, like in the game, Marlene sent Joel off with her men without even giving him his backpack, his weapons, nothing. They were just going to send him out there and just be like, "Yeah, go fuck yourself. Thank you for bringing her across the country, but bye." Like the Fireflies were pieces of dog shit. And they still are. But Marlene sending Joel off without any of the things that she promised to him if he delivered Ellie as agreed upon.
Sure.
So, bitch. Second, and this is lesser of import, but still worth mentioning, that Marlene was going to, like I said, like she was going to strip him of everything and then just drop him. And that was going to be her kindness to let him go. Like, thanks. But I don't understand the people that are ride or die for the Fireflies. I'm like, these are such a bad group of people. Like, this faction is such shit to me. And side note, I bought for Bella's birthday, because she loves The Last of Us, I bought her a Look for the Light t-shirt from Hot Topic. Well, also, this sweatshirt is from Hot Topic. Sponsor us.
You did it.
But I bought her, it just says "Look for the Light." It's like this dark gray shirt with like black lettering, and it has the Firefly logo on it. I came this close to not buying it because of that fucking symbol. But I was like, I'm not going to be petty.
Nah, bitch.
Nah, bitch. You just said, "Nah, bitch." Oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Okay. Marlene does right out of the gate say, "Man, I didn't want to have to owe you anything." So she is acknowledging mission accomplished.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for your words.
I believe it was only when he begins the transformation into beast mode, like, "Oh, I have another way," that she's like, "Okay, deal's off."
That's such bullshit.
I mean, like, it's like, oh yeah, if you do this for me, then I'll hook you up with whatever, a motor, whatever was it, a battery.
Yeah, I think it was like, but in the game,
a car, a whole ass car, essentially,
Yeah.
and like gasoline and all that shit, and whatever. Potentially, she was still going to make good on that, but we'll never know.
No, not in the show. She wasn't. She was like, take him out to the highway, give him his backpack. If he does anything, shoot him.
Right. And again, Joel, there was when Joel and Tess in the episode 1 first meet Marlene, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's already a relationship there. Like they know of each other, right? Their paths had crossed multiple times before. I believe these people to all be survivors, right? So maybe they're just like, hey, this is more of like a timeout for you, brother. Get out on the highway. Let us do our thing.
I just don't.
It's too optimistic of a read of the situation.
It's way too optimistic of a read of a. Listen. I love you and I love your optimism, but like, come down a little bit to the real world that we're being shown here.
What I will say is that yes, you threatened. Realistically, probably the way it was. Oh, you're threatening to kill us. Well, fuck you too. Get out.
I don't think he threatened to kill them.
When he
was like, take me to her right now. No.
When she says, I don't, or what is the actual line about another way? Because when the way he says essentially like, I have another way, what he is, in my mind, the subtext to that, what he is implying is like, I'll kill every fucking person in this building. And wait a minute, he does.
Yeah. And she knew that he was capable of that.
But that's what I'm saying. So like, as the moment that he threatened.
To be honest with you, I don't remember him saying that line.
She says something, Marlene says something like, find another way. Or he's like, God damn it. We have it in the notes here. We just talked about it, but like.
He just says he does. In parentheses, I wrote, have another choice. He didn't say.
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that in the notes. Okay, that's perfect. Yes, he does. That is implied violence coming. And that's what Marlene, I believe that's how she reads that, as a threat.
Yeah.
And that's when fair. She's like, get him out of my face. Deals off. Right?
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think deal was ever on, to be perfectly honest.
It's possible. I mean, fireflies are in rough shape to begin with most of the time. Most of the time we see them, they are in rough shape.
Yeah. All right. I already talked about Ellie being awake. So last talking point, Joel willing to fight for Ellie the moment he wakes up was, of course, very apparent. But I do wonder, though. So folks listening at home, now that we got through that storm of a conversation, which I knew some of these things are going to start happening, which I honestly, Andrew, I really genuinely hope that you enjoy this. I think having different points of view on podcasts is really fucking cool. I don't like echo chamber podcasts. I really don't.
Hey, I'm here. And
I don't want people to think that like I'm
Andrew
upset.
hasn't left the chat. Andrew hasn't left the chat.
Andrew would have left the chat fucking 15 years ago. He knows how I am.
And realistically, if we weren't recording right now, and this was a conversation that we were having, and believe me, these are conversations that are had in this house.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to be like, okay, you're right. That's fine.
But I don't want you to say that. Yeah.
This is literally, we're just reading this
differently.
What we're bringing to it as well is different than and not only are we reading it differently, we're bringing different sets of expectations into it.
For sure.
As well.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. You can enjoy the show for the show.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't need it to be.
But even if I want to try to do that, if I separate my brain from the game, which is damn near impossible, I will.
You can't.
Admit that.
There is no world where you can. Is what I'm trying to.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But if I'm separating the game from
you're not. It's not. It's like
It's like separating cordyceps from Ellie. Hey.
What? You're like, okay, but for a second, if I was able to remove the heart from my chest, just
and still be alive.
If I was able to remove the heart, it's like you would not be able to do that. You would make one big incision and you'd die. The removal would not work. That's all I'm telling you. If I was able to remove the brain from my head, hear me, listen.
Okay, but if I was able to remove the brain from my head,
You keep saying
and
this.
the heart from my chest,
Right.
the game from the show.
You see how these things are inextricably linked now.
I do.
I just had to give you a metaphor. Now you understand.
I understood the first time.
I don't think you did.
I did.
I think that's where we are butting heads, is you trying to separate your brain from your body.
Or my heart from my body.
Sure.
Because The Last of Us has my heart. So, all right. Okay, but if Andrew.
I mean, again.
Just let me get through the sentence, goddammit.
I can't stress this enough. I don't know how many times I have to say I'm a doctor, okay? You cannot remove your heart from your body.
All right. But just listen to me.
Medically impossible. Here we go.
If I can, for an hour to an hour and a half, for 9 Sundays, just put the game down.
Okay.
For a little bit of time. If I
assuming.
I would still have these thoughts. I might not have such strong opinions, but I still would look at the cold open, which didn't exist in the game. None of that existed in the game. I would still look at that information and look at what was presented in the season finale and just say, there's something on the wing, basically.
But again.
Oh, he's not going to move on. All right, we got to go to the next. I just
want to stress this really quickly, because I think it bears repeating.
Does it?
You've had 10 years.
No, I haven't had 10 years because I didn't play the game when it came out in 2013.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. You've had 8 years
I think it was
to consider this and think about it and read things and reread things and replay and this, that, and the other. You're locked in. What you think is what you think. And that's totally fine.
Yes. Thank you for saying that.
You can, I find it very you telling me that's like, I'm looking at it objectively is very dubious.
I don't look at anything objectively.
That's all I'm trying to tell you is that when I saw it, it's a great visual. If I could just surgically remove my heart from my chest, that is literally that. You have built a whole body around this thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all.
By the way,
and that's not
I'm
a bad
wearing
thing.
Pajamas halfway down.
That's fine.
It's late.
That's not a bad thing. I want to reiterate that that's not a bad thing. If you've been on the Last of Us train for 10 years and you feel a way about this thing and you feel differently than me and that the show has not hit the way that you wanted it to, that's valid. But just also keep in mind that you've been sitting with it for years.
Yes. I think that's a really important thing that you said, and I appreciate that because, again, we have not listened to the official podcast since episode 3. I think I listened to the first 3, and I put it off until we were done our show. Yeah. But I have heard that basically in the last episode, Neil Druckmann was once again just saying, I don't really fucking care what fans think. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't.
Sure.
And I mean, that's a whole other talking point. I think these people exist in these positions because they have fans. So to completely discount the opinion is really, that doesn't gel with me necessarily. But I also think that you have to have a backbone to say, I'm going to tell the story I want to tell. And if people don't like it, that's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Sure.
I think there's just a different way of saying, I don't give a shit what people think. And I don't think that always comes through appropriately, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't listen to the show. I've read articles that basically summarized it, and I've had friends basically paraphrase it. So when I listen to it for real, if I'm wrong, I will, of course, apologize and say that on our next show after I listen to it. I have no problem.
Do these friends also play the game?
Of course.
Do they also have feelings about Neil Druckmann?
Good
and
feelings.
Maybe have had feelings about Neil Druckmann for
very good feelings.
years. Okay.
Oh, for sure. There's a difference between fan service and appreciation, I think. And it's a fine line. But anyway, it's not my job. I'm an absolute fucking nobody, so it doesn't matter. But my question to the folks at home listening that I never got to because we fell down another rabbit hole.
You did it.
Yes, we did it. It was your fault, basically saying I had to rip my brain and my heart out of my body, and it still wouldn't make sense. But people unfamiliar with the games, did you see Joel's rampage coming? Did you know that this was going to happen? That what he did you know that was going to happen?
But more importantly, did you like it?
Oh, everybody liked it. Please. Anyway.
All right.
So we are still at St. Mary's Hospital, and Joel is being marched out of this building by 2 armed men. Marlene cries a single tear as all of this unfolds for several reasons, undoubtedly. But I would say Ellie's impending doom is at the top of the list. Yeah. But Joel is being repeatedly shoved and pushed as he slowly walks his way out. And he stops upon a directory for the hospital. He sees the floor that he needs to see. And then he asks them which way. And they shove him towards an open stairwell. That way, bitch. And as they descend down the steps, Joel goes deeper and farther from reality. You can almost literally see him disassociating from what's happening and slipping into this like primal mode that he has. But then he just comes to a dead stop, and then they push him, and then he stops again, but he stops for good this time. And the guard asks what the fuck he's doing, but this is the beginning of the end, really, for the Fireflies. And he gets the better of these 2, and he kills one real quick and then drops the other with a shot to the leg. And then he asks where Ellie is, but the guy just, doesn't answer him. He says he doesn't have time for this and kills him real quick. And Joel grabs Ellie's switchblade from the dead guard who is on the steps, a clip of ammo, and of course the assault rifle, and then his backpack, and goes back up from whence he came. And from this point onward, he begins his massacre. Justified massacre. That's how I feel. And in case anybody is curious. But he stalks through the hallways to the most ominous version of the main title song that I've ever fucking heard. It was so cool and so menacing, and I am obsessed with it. And I still have not listened to the entire soundtrack. Don't be mad at me. There's a lot of songs on there. I'm working my way through it. So, killing as he goes, killing as he does. He methodically takes them out one by one, kicking shells as he walks through the hallways, taking cover when need be. Joel is completely detached and on another plane of existence, his past clearly triggered in this moment and everything that he's endured since. And this is basically his Ellie butchering David scene, just a bit longer and stretched out. And one man appears to get away. Just one. And we're going to leave it at that. We can't talk about him. But another drops his weapon and surrenders. But Joel kills him anyway. And Andrew, if you recall, while we were watching that sequence, do you remember what I said as the guy was on the floor?
You said that looks like Craig Mazin.
No. That was from episode 1. And it was Craig Mazin.
It's called a callback. I don't recall what you said.
I said fucking shoot him. And he did. So I'm like ruthless. This would be anyway. So
okay.
What were you gonna say? What were you gonna say?
Nothing. No. Nothing. No. Yeah. Continue. Doing great.
So he searches on, cutting his way through the hospital, and he eventually uses Ellie's blade to kill one of the soldiers and gets his hand on another better automatic rifle that doesn't have a makeshift stock. And side note, did anybody the stock of that weapon? Andrew said it looked like the top of a crutch, but it looked like fingers to me. It looked like 3 or 4 human fingers, and it was weird as hell. But anyway,
it's not. No, it's certainly they're not.
I don't trust anything.
Fireflies aren't turning corpses into gun stocks.
Anyway, continuing on. Joel,
it's a left arm. They put the left arm onto the back of a.
Joel exterminates the entire hospital of Fireflies, And we see a trail of bodies in his wake, and then he grabs a pistol and finds himself in the pediatric surgery wing. So the hallway looks very long here, but inevitably it's a short distance. And there is no one up here. And there's nothing but children and child paintings on the walls, lining the walls and everything, and a door that is lit up like a beacon in the darkness at the end of the hallway. But before we get there,
look for the light. I get it.
I get it. Joel is completely, he's gone.
There is only Zool.
Yeah. like I said during the notes, this was similar to Ellie's justifiable murder of David. But to see it happen again and again and again, even in the game, like this still hurts. Not for the Fireflies, because fuck the Fireflies. But for Joel to be threatened again with the possibility of losing the only person that truly matters to him. And like in my heart, I'm like, how fucking dare? How dare you? Like, number one, how dare you? It was so menacing. My only note is that it was very fast.
That's first of all, let me just say, I can only imagine how cathartic it is for you to let all of this Firefly rage out finally. I know you've been holding back for 8 episodes.
2 months.
And good for you.
Thank you.
I hope it's working out well for you.
Thank you.
I have no strong opinions about this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shortened sequence, but I thought it was stylishly done. And with that backing track, very effective.
I agree.
So there was a lot of slow motion, which I don't think we've seen on the show. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the only time I remember is when Perry spotted the bloater.
That was it. There was one moment of slow motion that we saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a little weird. It was a little cheesy. That slow motion. It was like slow motion, but also very short. Generally, slow motion, you want to have a long, what did you just do? Like the Matrix? What was you? Generally, a slow motion sequence you want to have be a few seconds long to show something that would normally happen very fast in detail. And that's what they did here during this sequence, which was great. Mm-hmm. But yes, I agree with the rest. He was completely just in
massacre mode.
Right. I had used the GIF in our little group chat of Liam Neeson from Taken. I have a very particular set of skills. Yeah. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. Yeah. And that's like exactly what we're experiencing right now. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple people like Mike, our brother-in-law.
Mike?
Your bestie.
Mike?
Hi, Mike.
The
Mike.
Remind me to tell you, I'll have to tell the audience why we call him Mikey 12 Balls.
Yes. Tell that right after here, because people who don't know.
No, I won't. I'm not going to. Someone will have to remind me later.
Oh.
A listener. Put it in the review, please.
Yeah, if you want to know why we call our brother-in-law Mikey 12 Balls, write in. TLOU podcast at gmail.com.
He thought he was going to get away unscathed. He will not.
No, he will not. But he mentioned, again, he did not play the games.
Yes.
Did not know anything about the story. And he was like, that was really fast. Like, that seemed abnormally fast. The whole thing, especially the fight sequence. So I'm curious to know if other people felt similarly. Gamers, fans of the game, or just fans of the show.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to how good Joel is at just murdering a bunch of people. There is also that, right?
Yeah.
The whole time, again, I can't stress this enough. When people tell you who they are, believe them. He, right out of the gate, in the first episode, we learned that Joel and Tess are not good people. We learn it again from Tommy later on about the things they did to survive, right? Like, Joel clearly still has the capacity to be a brutal, brutal human being. So
he's a nice man.
Let's leave the Joels out of this.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say is it could also be just like, wow, this guy's really good at doing something really bad.
Well, bad by...
If you believe that the taking of life
yes.
is a bad thing.
It is a bad thing in the world we live in now. Would
Right.
I feel the same in that world? I don't know.
Isn't it interesting to have such flexible morals?
Yes,
the human brain is truly a miracle.
Yes, it is.
No, yes. All I am saying is that...
Is this going off the rails?
No, it's fine. You get it. I believe I made my point.
Yeah, you did.
It's fine.
For
okay.
sure, yeah. And the last talking point before we move to the next section is just like the lengths that we will go to, the measures that we will go to for a loved one.
We just saw it.
That's what it is.
Okay.
End of story. Joel
enters the room where Ellie is being kept, and we see her on the table. She's on the slab, right? They haven't started cutting yet.
She's on a bed. She's not on a slab.
Isn't it a metal? Oh, okay, whatever. I mean, it's more visual to say she's on the slab, right?
That's so dark.
It sounds like, I don't know. Yeah. Look, I'm a doctor. Okay. I think I know that it's called a slab.
Oh my God. It's almost 10 p.m. Thank you for putting up with us, guys.
They haven't started cutting yet. A doctor and 3 nurses are in there with her. One says that she's ready. Joel slips in quietly, like a
thief in the
jaguar
night.
In the jungle, right? They don't notice him until he says, "Unhook her." Joel waves a pistol and repeats himself. Doctor asks, how you got in here? And then he goes to pull a scalpel on Joel. Joel just kind of like very casually swings the gun up and shoots this dude right in the head.
He doesn't even take his eyes off of Ellie the entire time.
Yeah, it's just like a muscle memory thing. Like that. This guy's like, he's just in the way. Get out. Nurses scream, but eventually do as they're told. They unhook her. They covered her bleeding arm because she had like an IV in there and stuff like that. Joel orders them to turn around. As he goes to Ellie, they kind of, go up against this back wall. He scoops her up and then brings her to him, hugs her for a moment before he carries her out. He walks past the dead doctor on the floor. There is a very obvious close-up of the bullet hole right in the noggin, left side of his head. Joel enters the elevator and takes it down. He looks and studies Ellie as she sleeps in his arms. She's clearly under from some drugs, right? She will not be waking up anytime soon. But she is alive, and his goal is to make sure she stays that way. They take an exit to the parking garage and head towards a truck battery that is charging. A battery. Is this Joel's truck? Would this have been his goal?
Probably.
Okay.
Well, I think they promised him a repurposed Fedra truck.
Maybe
this is a Dodge Durango.
And hey, Dodge. I was going to try to, I couldn't figure out Dodge's. I couldn't think off the top of my head. I was like, built Ford tough, but that's clearly Ford. Would not be the Dodge slogan. That's fine.
That's all right. The Home Depot song just came into my head.
Wow, that's a banger.
It is a banger.
You just put that on for a couple hours and vibe. Marlene skulks out from behind a corner and draws her weapon on Joel. Says he can't keep Ellie safe forever, right? No matter how hard he tries, however many people he kills, she's going to grow up and then he'll die and she'll leave. How long until she's torn apart by infected or raiders? She brings up all these hypothetical situations, right? She's like, Joel, look, be realistic. Yeah. She will always live in a broken world, and Joel could have saved that. Joel counters with the fact that it isn't for Marlene to decide either way, right? Brings up the agency that they took away from her. Marlene says it's not for him to decide either, which is turnabout is fair play. Well done. So she brings in Ellie and then asks, what would Ellie want, right? Realistically, again, and in a way, she turns it around on herself. Like, where was this attitude when you were putting her under, right?
Well, that was my commentary.
I know. I'm just saying, though. Yeah. But yeah, it works either way.
She's like, what would she want? Well, why didn't you fucking stop to ask her?
Exactly. She tries to talk Joel into believing that Ellie would have done it because it's the right thing to do. Save the world, right? Save everybody. Marlene bargains. It's not too late. Even after all he's done, there's still a way. Joel looks down at Ellie and he's basically, he's committed to the decision, right? Yeah. He's like, we just see it in his eyes. But let's chat.
Yeah.
Before we go.
Yeah. So this is just a note. Okay. There will be no extra talking about it. There will just be this note and then the next note. Joel killed.
And then the next note and the next note. And we will just get through the rest of this episode super duper quickie.
Yeah. So Joel killed the doctor and spared the nurses. Let me repeat that. He killed the doctor. He didn't torture the doctor. Is it brutal? Yes. But it was necessary. And technically, the doctor pulled a blade on Joel first. And I'm going to leave it there. I literally can't talk about anything else.
Brutal.
Carrying Ellie. So in the game, Ellie's head, and we've talked about this mirroring reflection thing that they are absolutely doing on purpose.
Sure.
With purposeful intention, rather. Carrying Ellie. So in the game, Joel carries Ellie and her head was on his right side. In the show, her head is on his left side. And this is the same thing. He has a wound, like a nick, like a bullet or something grazed his neck. And the wound is on the left side of his neck in the show. In the game, it's on the right side, particularly in the remake. It wasn't there in the remaster or the original game, but when they updated it, they gave him a cut on the side of the right side of his neck. So this is more examples of that mirroring that we talked about many episodes ago.
Sure.
About how this is not a recreation, it's an adaptation. So it's a mirror reflection of itself. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing because it allows the source material to remain what it is and as special as it is, and allows the show to do the same in its own way while adding a bit of nuance.
Sure.
I think it's just a beautiful way to honor the origins of this story and this game and the other actors and the blood, sweat, and tears and everything that they put into it. It's just a wonderful thing. And I know we haven't mentioned it in a while, but I've certainly noticed it throughout the series. So
there's one more mirroring moment that we will experience very soon.
Yes. I'm curious to know your thought, but also people at home. What do you think is going through Joel's mind as he's looking specifically in the moment when they're when they're in the elevator going down to the garage? So after he's killed all of these people and he's let the nurses live, there were 3 nurses. And then that one person that got away, the one soldier looking person that got away, he's in the elevator. He's isolated. It's just him and Ellie. He's looking at her. What do you think is going through his head?
Do you remember at the end of Christmas Vacation?
If you're going to do the Hallelujah, where's the Tylenol speech?
No.
Okay.
I said at the end of Christmas Vacation.
That was kind of the end.
The very last line of the film. Long story short, the family is retreating back in. Their Santa Claus that was on the lawn has blown up from an explosion of which I will not tell you the origin of. It's flying across the sky, and Clark Griswold just stares and he says, "I did it." That's Joel right now.
I did
Full of pride.
I saved her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was I got the impression that it was I saved her. But I think this is the first time I ever seen something else. I saved her, ellipsis, but at what cost? And what do I have to do to make sure that she doesn't ever find out the truth?
It's possible.
I think there was a little bit more nuance because this isn't, while they brought everything and then some to the video game, and especially when they remade it and dropped the remake in September of 2022, we got to see so many more emotions and so much more heart and soul in the characters that was always there, but technology wasn't there yet 10 years ago. I think some of the choices that Pedro made as Joel were a little bit different.
Yeah.
Of course, they had to be. That was intentional on his part, for sure, because he never played the game. He doesn't know. But in that moment, it wasn't just, I saved her, I did it. There was something else. Almost melancholic.
Right. I wish I didn't have to do this.
I wish it didn't come to this. What, am I going to lie? Do I tell her the truth? There's so much happening.
Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about one of my favorite stories of all time.
Tell me about it.
It's the story of a man named Jonathan Wick.
Oh my God.
And he's not that dissimilar from Joel, to be quite honest.
Joel came first.
Okay. John Wick is a guy who seems very reluctant to be good at what he's good at. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go around killing everybody.
The reluctant anti-hero.
But people keep fucking with him. No, John Wick is a hero. Please remove anti from it.
Yes, sir. That's where Andrew's passion truly lies. John Wick. Please.
That's all I'll say. There are some similarities there. It's not the means sometimes cause grief at the ends. There's probably a better way to phrase that. However, John Wick does not revel. I don't believe John Wick revels in the chaos and the carnage that he causes. I believe he would rather not.
Yeah, just like
and
Joel.
I think that's Joel now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was it? What potentially was that something he reveled in at one point? Maybe.
No, I never get the impression that he wanted to kill people.
Okay.
I don't know.
But all that is to say is that he took no joy in that, but there probably was no other way, right? I don't know if he wanted to kill 30 people today. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Last talking point for the next section. So Marlene's skulking around in the garage. In the game, I did wonder what became of her during this whole massacre.
Sure.
Because she had to have heard what was going on and then just, I don't know, went down to the garage because that was the most logical area where Joel would end up, I suppose.
It's called skating to where the puck is going to be.
I get that. I respect that. I genuinely like Marlene, though, even though she pisses me off.
Yeah, I think she, of all of them, truly is clearly the most capable. She's been alive for 20 years. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones are just like very throwaway.
Well, yeah.
She's clearly she's a leader for a reason.
Yeah, everyone else is just a battering ram. The ensuing conversation about what Ellie would want, we touched on it briefly during your notes. It was just that it just occurred to me, and it's weird that I didn't have this thought when playing the game, but I did with the show, and that goes back to our argument at the start of this. Our debate at the beginning of spirited debate. That's good. 2 or 3 sections ago now, where I was trying to explain how, the beginning of the show didn't really pay off what was revealed by Marlene, and then all the motivations behind the non-consent of telling Ellie and her being awake and so on and so forth. So basically, when I played the game, I never had that question of how dare Marlene sit there and look at Joel and be like, that's what she would want. But then she didn't have the balls to wake Ellie up and ask her. Because what if Ellie would have said, hell the fuck no, I'm not doing that. I thought you just wanted some blood, girl. Get the hell out.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things where it's always like, and people who have played part 2, just go with me here because I have to talk about things like I don't know what's going to happen. Okay. Are we good? All right. So I think Ellie having this purpose of I'm the cure for humanity. She makes jokes here and there, whatever. It's something for her that gives her life meaning. Whereas up to that point, she didn't really have that before, but she seems like a person who needs to have a purpose, a goal, a reason to be alive, even though the world is basically just a machine now, a killing machine. And for her to finally find something, even at the expense of her best friend, whom she had to kill, and Tess's death, Sam's death, Henry's death, everyone's fucking death, essentially, and potentially Joel's, she still believed, I have to do this thing. But in her mind, it was give some blood.
Sure.
And after, and now this is where the show got different. After that conversation, Joel telling her, I tried to kill myself and failed. I tried to kill myself because my daughter was dead and I didn't see a reason to exist anymore. You cannot look me in the eyes and tell me that if they woke Ellie up and gave her the option and said, in order to do this, we will have to kill you. Do you say yes or do you say no? You cannot look me in the eye and say she would say yes. Because now she knows, one, this is not certain that it's real and can happen. And two, this man whom I love and have been on this perilous journey with, and he matters more than anybody else has my entire life, tried to kill himself after his daughter died. What the fuck do you think he's going to do if I say yes, kill me? He's going to die. And that death is on me now. And I saw someone tweet literally that thought that I just gave out to the little world that listens to our podcast.
The ether.
Yes. The little ether that listens to our podcast. Where someone was like, there's no way that Ellie would have said yes. And that would have shattered all of her. It would have probably hurt her. And God knows what would have happened if Marlene would have forced her. And I know we can't even really muse on that because it doesn't fucking matter. That's not what happened.
It's true.
But it was weird that I never had that thought during the garage sequence in the game. And now I'm so like, yeah, who the fuck are you, Marlene? Saying like, she would want that. You didn't even wake her up.
Nah, bitch.
That's all. That's everything. That's all.
Okay.
I've rolled my eyes so many times on this podcast. I'm so sorry. Right.
I'm going to zoom in on every one of them.
Please
We're going to do a mega close-up.
You're going to slow it down.
Yeah.
Please don't.
Just like the sequence of Joel in the hospital. It'll be slowed down.
Oh my God.
Play the theme song real slow. It'll be great.
Oh, I love that song. All right. So we are now in the truck. Joel is driving the aforementioned truck, eyes looking pretty forlorn before they close and his head kind of shakes side to side very slightly. And then we hear some noises from the back seat of the vehicle. And in the rearview mirror, we see what Joel sees. Ellie is waking up and he tells her she's all right and she's with him and everything's good. And he says to take it slow as the drugs are wearing off. And she mumbles through her words here that she was with the Fireflies and then asks about what drugs? Interesting. We're going to have to talk about that. So he swallows and says they were running tests on her. And as he says this, the scene returns to the garage where we just left, and Ellie is in Joel's arms. And Marlene, we see Marlene again, she nods and lowers her weapon. She's basically backing off, saying it doesn't have to be this way. Just still trying to make her point. But like, he just massacred an entire hospital of people and she lowers her weapon on him because she thinks she can reason with him. Are you kidding me, girl? Anyway, so there are a whole lot more like Ellie. This is what Joel is telling her. Yeah. And that people are immune. There's dozens of them. But the doctors at the hospital, the Firefly doctors, couldn't make any of it work. And then we are once again back in the garage. We're just kind of flip-flopping back and forth. And Marlene is shot by Joel and she falls. And then we're in the truck again. And he hesitates as the memory comes to him and floods back to his present moment. But he continues on. And he says that they've actually stopped looking for a cure. And Ellie listens in the back and asks about her clothes here. And Joel says raiders attacked the hospital and he was barely able to get her out of there. That they'll get new clothes along the way. And Ellie asks then if anyone was hurt, and Joel says yes. Ellie's eyes go to Joel from the back, and she asks if Marlene is okay. And he doesn't answer that question. Instead, he just says that he's taking us home. And Ellie rolls over and away from Joel at that, and he just drives on before saying, I'm sorry. We go back to the garage, and we see the shot that took Marlene down from Joel's pistol, of which he raised from underneath Ellie's legs. And then Joel places Ellie in the back seat of the truck. But we hear her struggling still, and Marlene is on the ground. She's alive, but she's bleeding out, and she's begging for her life. And Joel just says, you'd come after her. And he shoots Marlene point blank. So before we get to the last sequence, this whole scene, for the most part, plays out identically to the game. the holding, the trying to reason, the shooting, the back and forth between the car, being in the car and then being back in the garage.
Mhm.
The dialogue is different, but it's very heavy hitting and divisive for some people. For me, in all seriousness, I know I've made a lot of jokes, but I fully understand why Joel did what he did. And I think it's incredibly justifiable. And that includes Marlene's death. There's no world where Marlene wouldn't have tried to find Ellie and thus destroy everyone had she more people,
Mhm.
but I don't know. And but she would have made their lives living hell. Oh wait, but she stripped the decision from Ellie as much as Joel did, and she ultimately paid the price for it. Another oh wait, and all that's to say, there's a habit of dividing fandom.
Sure.
That, while I think is, how do I talk eloquently about this? I think it's okay to present decisions that are made that might buck up against the beliefs that people on a large scale will challenge or could challenge. I think that there's importance in that. And I think that if you have a narrative presented in the same way that The Last of Us does, where the player doesn't have the choice to do anything but that, and then that translate to a show where we watch the character do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting and it's compelling, and that's why it works. But I think there's a stopping point to that as well. But we can't talk about that. So the division in fandom happens in part 1, and it will happen. Well, it happens in season 1, and it absolutely will happen in season 2 and beyond. So prepare yourselves, people. I'm not going to say why or how, but I just think that it's to a lesser degree in part 1 and season 1 overall. And this weird thing is happening where people who had only played long before the show was announced and cast and film, whatever, long before it was even a twinkle in HBO's eye, it was only the game. And people constantly talked about what Joel did.
Sure.
And I would say 70 to 8, I'd say 80% of people might, not a mathematician, not a statistician.
Saying a lot of things
not
that
taking
we're not.
polls. Yeah. But I would say 75 to 80% of people agreed with Joel and what he did. Not his lie, but his actions. But there's this weird thing happening with the show where I haven't seen anyone disagree with what he did.
Yes.
So it's very validating for me. I fucking love it. But it's weird to me. Like, what is, and this is a question for you before we even get to our questions. Like, what is that? Like, why is the game more divisive for players, but a show, it's like the audience is like, no, I fucking get it. He did the right thing. I'm done. Done.
Difference between narrative storytelling and interactive storytelling. In the game, you are Joel.
Yeah.
And you get to that point where you get to the operating room. And you have, even though you as a person, assuming the avatar of Joel, may not want to do that, right? There's got to be another way. The game makes you do it. And so that causes a little bit of dissonance, narrative dissonance, like, that choice wasn't a choice at all. Now, was it? And that's why. So you can, I totally understand how a person would bristle and push back against that versus a show, which is there's no input, right? A show is telling you the story. And so you get invested in it because you have related to specific character beats, story beats, maybe a funny quote, that sort of thing. You connect to it in a different way. There are certain things that only video games can do, which is why it's such a powerful medium. And then there are things that the linear narrative storytelling of a television show or a movie is expert at. And I think we're seeing that, right? We were presented with a very compelling case over 8.5 episodes about why this girl should live.
Mhm.
And when she did, everyone's like, makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's all.
At the cost of
Doesn't matter.
X amount of people,
cost
it doesn't matter.
Like literally the cost doesn't, if it was twice as many people that died,
it wouldn't matter.
No. That's just how this goes.
Yeah.
If we built her up to be like a complex villain type hero, like a complex villain type person, then it might be a little bit different at the end. But no, that's not how the show went, and rightfully so. So there you go.
All right. I love that. No notes. So the back and forth scene, of course, was iconic in the game because the first time you're playing it, and this goes to your point, the first time playing the game, you didn't know what Joel was going to do was he going to kill Marlene or was he going to give Ellie to Marlene?
Sure.
And this is another instance, and we're asking a lot of questions for the people at home, homework peeps. But I remember playing the game and I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's no way he gave Ellie to Marlene. Because they have that conversation in the garage and then it cuts to him driving in the truck. And you think, is he alone? Did he fucking do that? Why kill all of those fucking people if he's not gonna, he followed through. Interesting note, something to keep in your mind for later. But
okay.
I'm eager to hear what you thought when the first time you played it, Andrew, but also people at home. What did you think Joel did? Do you think he handed Marlene over? Or do you think he took that girl with him?
When I played it?
Yeah.
I was like, that's a pretty classic storytelling technique with film.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just cut away to and you're like, I'm going to wait for the camera to widen out or maybe change angles before I make a determination here. And I was, it's right. And that's exactly what happens. So, everything that led up to that point reinforced what the end result was going to be. Like Marlene, the last domino to fall, right, was not going to change everything that led up to that point is how I kind of interpreted that, both in the game and again on the show. It was great.
Yeah.
It was like, this is the last obstacle to overcome.
Yeah.
And it's it's a little sadder than the rest of the nameless, faceless people.
Yeah.
But also it was like one of the easiest choices Joel ever made, I think. Like, yeah, this is nothing. Like, if it's between her and you, it's her every single time.
Yeah. And again, just going back to and not that I think that Joel is this type of person to recount every time somebody did him wrong in the past. I think that's certainly more not his style. I don't think he's that type of person, but she literally was about to march him out of the hospital and then kill Ellie. And then before that, they didn't really like each other. They just kind of had to work together, by proxy. He was the battering ram for Tess.
Sure. That makes total sense.
Well, yeah. So the fact that she lowered the gun was just such an amateur move on her part. She should have known better. I
mean, what was she going to do also? I mean, it's not like she could have shot at Joel because he was holding Ellie right there. What if she missed? She was in she was in one of those classic no-win situations.
Yeah. Son of a bitch.
So there it is.
Yeah. So the first lies to Ellie about the events at St. Mary's Hospital happen in this truck. And this is where me personally being a Joel apologist and defender kicks into overdrive. A lot of, we talked about this, so I don't really have to go into just the argument that we just talked about, the difference between the divisiveness as a game play, a gamer versus an audience watching a TV show. However, it's always interesting to me that people are the people who are oh, I totally understand why Joel did what he did. I totally get it, but I can't fucking stand that he lied to her. And I'm like, you're basically saying murder, good, lying, bad. And I'm like, that's where you draw the line?
Right.
It's a little, just make it make sense to me.
Flexible morals. We just talked about it not too long ago.
It's like, and I'm in in that position too, where I've been like, I don't like what they did,
So I'll murder them.
but I don't know. It just always made me laugh where I'm like, people are so upset that he lied. But did you not see the bodies? Did you not just see that?
In fairness, to not completely disregard that, right?
Mhm.
I would say, and again, I'm not agreeing, but I will say that like a lie between these two
Mhm.
who have been through so much and care so deeply about each other, killing these other, it just kind of pales in comparison. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like relatively, like those, the fireflies, like, who, like, I mean,
I know what you're saying.
Realistically, like, who gives a shit, right? But like, we don't know a single one of those people's names, right? They're literally like red shirts on old episodes of Star Trek or something, you know, like just literally there to die. Whereas,
Ellie, we know and love Ellie, and we want to protect her.
Exactly. We want, and it is a betrayal. Because
betrayal.
I know. I wanted to. I wasn't sure. I wanted to even use that word, but I guess it fits. But I've had a few things to drink tonight. That's all. That's all I'll say about that. Is like it's not nothing.
I just meant from a high level view.
Yeah, If we're if you're taking like a very religious type stance of like, what's worse, lying or murder? Like very easy.
It's like, come on,
super easy.
Yeah.
However, I think
it's not that.
In the context of this story, in this relationship, comparatively, it is a big deal, but not like, again, nothing I would say is like, I don't know, man. He should have, you know, like I'm not gonna play devil's advocate is what I'll say.
No, I understand. And I'm just more doing it because I see people get so bent out of shape about the lying, but say nothing about the murder. And it's just interesting, but I understand we're desensitized to that by now because he's desensitized to that. But when it comes to Ellie, it's like when you lie, or not even just Ellie and Joel, but people in general, when you lie to someone you love, it breaches that boundary. It's disrespectful. And you're basically saying, I value my version of the truth to the point of where I don't even want to defend it because I know I did the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's true.
But that's true about most lies. But in Joel's case, I don't think he sees what he did was wrong. He just sees it as, I'm saving you. I saved you, but I don't want to destroy this purpose that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even necessarily think that he's afraid that she'll leave him or just abandon him or whatever. I think it's literally, I don't want her to feel like her purpose is gone.
Yeah, no, that tracks.
Which is a very selfish assumption on his part. But again, we're going to talk about all of this in our big bonus show where we talk about the whole season.
What?
But so real quick, Joel's I'm sorry versus Ellie's I'm sorry with Sam.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, again, back and forth, parallels, things, recurring themes, recurring moments. And I think Joel's sorry wasn't for what he did. It wasn't for his lie, his initial lies. I think it was, I'm sorry for you, Ellie, that whatever you thought was going to happen can now never happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't going to happen anyway. And how do you explain that to her?
I don't know.
So.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right, bring it home, Andrew.
This is called The End.
Well, I called it The End.
No, it's called The End. Craig let me know when I asked him.
It. Oh, wow.
The music begins. Very iconic music in this world of The Last of Us. As we see Joel and Ellie heading north toward Wyoming. On the road alone, surrounded by quiet, lush, green earth everywhere for miles. They pass the state sign for Wyoming. We see Ellie touching and studying her bite marks and scars. A hissing sound, and then Joel tells us that the truck got them close enough. They have to walk the rest of the way. About a 5-hour hike, but they can manage that. Joel asks if she remembers. and that is the walk to Billstown after Tessa's death. You know, Ellie smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes, right? She remembers.
Yeah.
They walk along, birds chirping all around. Joel mentions here that Sarah used to like to hike all the time. She didn't love mosquitoes, but loved climbing and scampering, which is a fun word. Just a fun word.
So good.
She'd see a big rock and just take off for it. Ellie listens quietly from behind. No backpack with her, but is struggling again. Something is like eating at her. We could tell. Joel believes that Sarah would have liked Ellie, but they are not the same kind of kids at all. And then Ellie asks, how so? Joel looks at Ellie and says that Sarah was a lot more girly, but not that girly. Ellie isn't girly. And Ellie says, she's not. And Joel recognizes that. He's like, whew, whew. Sarah was taller and had a killer smile. Not that Ellie doesn't, right? Like he keeps saying these things and, like backpedaling. It's cute.
It's cute.
Yeah. But he thinks Sarah would have liked Ellie the most because Ellie is funny. She'd have made Sarah laugh, right? And Ellie says she bet that she would have liked Sarah too. They eventually walk into view of Jackson, right? We see it beneath us, sprawled out. Joel says, there you go. Not much further now.
Well, there you go.
There you go. As he begins to walk, Ellie stops him. Then fights to get whatever this is out. She goes back to Kansas City, and when Joel asked her about the first time she killed someone, Ellie says when she was bit, she wasn't alone. Her best friend was there and got bit too. She talks about Riley and her really didn't know what to do, but they decided to wait it out, to be all poetic and lose their minds together. Riley lost her mind, and Ellie had to kill her, right? Very sad. We've seen this already. Riley was the first to die. And then Tess and Sam. And Joel interrupts and says, that's not on you, Ellie. That sometimes things don't work out the way we hope. That you feel as though you've come to an end and you don't know what to do next, but you keep going. You find something to fight for. Ellie cuts him off here and says for him to swear to her. To swear that everything he told her about the Fireflies is true. And Joel takes a beat and he swallows and says, I swear. She stares at him, looks away from his eyes, and nods before just saying, okay. And it cuts to the credits, and Jackie wants me to stress here that the right song is playing. Thank God. Thank God. And that is the end of season 1 of HBO's The Last of Us.
Yeah. We did it.
All right.
But we almost did it. You get back here right now. So, throwback. Joel remembers quite a lot. And this is how he shows his care. And I think this is one of my favorite personality traits of his. Because forgetfulness, in my opinion, is fucking rude as hell.
Wow.
And I just don't like it. I think it's lazy. If you're not like taking the time to hear someone out and listen and pay attention and like not listen to every single fucking thing they say. But if I say a couple things or like I'll give you an example. Best friend Bree. She was traveling for work last week. She was in San Diego. And there was this Instagram post where it was like 4 simple ways to be like, I care about somebody.
Okay.
Or I care about my best friend or I love someone, whatever. And they were all really meaningful ways. But I was like, there's one thing that's on that list or that's not on that list that is my absolute favorite thing in the whole world to say to someone or have someone say to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Would you like extra bacon?
No.
Damn it.
I'm not you.
Damn it. More coffee? Question mark.
No, if you're traveling or if I'm traveling, what is my favorite thing to hear?
Drive safe.
No.
Text me when you get there.
No. I mean, not the actual travel. Like if I'm at a place, like when I was in Big Sur, California, and I'm experiencing the majesty of the world, and I'm thinking of someone, what might I text them?
Wish you were here.
There it is.
Okay.
And,
Thank you for
and
painting a very elaborate picture for me to be able to arrive at the correct answer.
You're welcome. No, that is my favorite thing. And I said, And Brie actually said that in the text. I was like, there's one thing missing. Do you know what it is? And she was like, wish you were here. And I was like, see, that's how people show love. That's how I show love. The fact that she remembered that. It's not like I talk about that all the time. I've mentioned that maybe twice in the 2.5 years that we've been friends.
There you go.
It's important when you pay attention. This is how we show love. Paying attention to things. Frank fucking said that in episode 3. Joel paid attention to every single moment with Ellie, even when he didn't give a fuck or pretended not to give a fuck. And talking about Sarah, talking about Chef Boyardee,
Yes.
bringing back the 5-hour hike, we can manage that. Like, these are things that paying attention is how we show our care. And that was so beautifully realized.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love that about Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right. Thank you for the tangent, people. But the looks that Jolene.
Stop. We're going to get content
There's like
ID'd.
I know. Let's stop. And now I have to sing the rest of the song in my head. All right. So the looks that Ellie gives Joel from behind as she's walking behind him, they are not good. Did you pay attention to that?
Did you describe them as ungood or?
They are very ungood. She is basically just daggers. He's like talking about his daughter and just having a good old time walking with Ellie. And she's just kind of like, it's not great.
What are you doing, Joel?
Yeah. Stop talking. And speaking of Sarah, the way that he's talking of her so easily shows how far that he's come in the time that he spent with Ellie and just how much healing and growth has happened.
Yeah.
None of that happened in 20 years. And yet Ellie was the one, as he said, without saying it, who healed him.
Yes.
And it was just absolutely beautiful to hear more about his daughter and the relationship that he shared with her, her interests, her joy, her personality, even her physical features. A little taller than you, killer smile. You know, she'd love you because you're funny. Like, and we got a little bit of that in episode 1, but to hear that from a parent's perspective is just, it makes it that much more meaningful, I think. And, yeah, I love that. He kind of touches a little bit on that in the game too, and it's really sweet. I think it's so important that Joel mentioned that Ellie isn't a girly kind of girl.
Yeah.
And it's important to note, it's just very important to note this and for Ellie to reinforce it because they are completely two different people. Joel is not replacing his daughter with Ellie. Nobody can replace your child. There's just more love that he had to give. And that's what this is. And Ellie is her own person. She's her own personality, her own life, her own characteristics, everything. And she's beautiful and wonderful as is. And I think that was such a beautiful gesture written into the show.
Okay.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Ellie's doubt and Joel's lie, followed by more of Ellie's doubt. I don't really know much more what to talk about this, and I hope this doesn't frustrate people. I just think a lot more of this will be answered and talked about in season 2 and beyond. So it's important for us to kind of just skirt it a little bit.
Okay.
But I think talking about the implication of Joel's lie and how some people are so angry at him and they're like, he's a selfish fuck. He just did it because he didn't want to live without someone else he loved. And you know what? Absolutely. That's a part of it, but that's not all of it.
Yeah.
And we discussed more of it. But beyond that, I think saving it for a later conversation, whether we're covering the whole season or when we're moving on to season 2 and beyond, I think it might be more important to keep for then.
Okay.
Because I'm afraid of spoiling. Okay.
We do not spoil.
We do not spoil. And that's, I mean, when it comes to the lack of infected, I'm not going to beat that drum anymore, but I do think that it calls into the question the severity of how much a cure is needed.
Okay. I mean, what if we could bring them all back though, you know?
You're saying, okay, so somebody who's infected and their skull is split open with fungal plates, we can reverse that, is what you're saying.
As long as all of the brain and skull is still there, it will slowly recede back in and heal together because of the cure.
I'm shaking my head.
I know that's a visual joke, and I really liked it. That's why I laughed.
Yes.
I'm kidding, of course. I don't believe that to be true.
No.
But
no.
Yeah.
They are gone. But okay, now we are officially, did we cover everything? If we didn't cover something specifically, if I forgot something, if Andrew forgot something, we will have our big town hall podcast where we just en masse go down all the things in a chaotic beat for beat.
Yeah, we'll just skip from episode 6 to 1 to 8 to 3 to whatever.
Wherever we end up. Maybe we'll start with 9. Who knows? But all that to say, my episode rating that Andrew doesn't give a fuck about.
Doesn't exist. It didn't exist in the beginning, so we just arbitrarily added it at some point.
I appreciate you saying we when you know it's me.
The royal we.
The royal we. So I'm going to give the season 9 finale episode of The Last of Us an 8.
Brutal.
Yeah. It had too many these moments. Even though the highs were so high and just wonderful, and the additions, the giraffe sequence, the conversation with Joel and Ellie at the camp, the rampage, there were so many things that were just fantastic in this episode. But there were other things that were really not. So
okay, fair enough. Stern but fair.
Stern but fair, baby. All right, some quick TV versus game spoilers. We talked a lot about stuff along the way. So this is going to be a very short section, maybe like 90 seconds, at most 2 minutes. So just come on back if you don't want to hear it. But if you do, awesome. So
cool.
Yeah, great. So Anna in the games. Ellie's mom in the games, she was just a letter and a switchblade, essentially.
That's it.
She was a letter that you pulled out of Ellie's backpack when you played as Ellie in the winter chapter. And it was a beautiful letter. And the knife was also from her mom, just as it was in the show. But that's all the significance that Anna had in the game. However, I think that the lack of a letter undoes something for Ellie.
We don't know if there's a lack of a letter yet.
We don't. So we can't definitively say that. You're right. Ellie might still have it. So the RV and its contents, you had some supplies that you would grab in there, but also a family. There was a family that was dead on the bed in there with a note, a picture. I can't remember if it was a picture or a note. I'm sorry. But Joel was just kind of like, oh, Jesus. Like he was horrified at seeing that. In the show, it's presumed he just walks out of the RV that had a broken guitar and a can of Chef Boyardee, and he was just like, yeah, So, a little bit less of an impact overall for that. After that RV sequence and the guitar conversation, Ellie stops and looks at an advertisement on the side of a city bus, and it's an airplane. So it's for the airport or something like that. And she talks about this dream that she had where she was flying. And they have this brief back and forth where she's just like, man, that must have been great, But it goes back to the beginning of the episode, or beginning of episode 3, where Joel was like, nah, flying wasn't that great.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the conversation in episode 9, but they sort of had it back in episode 3.
Sure.
So they did it in a more contextually appropriate area, which I appreciate. So the trauma camp and Ellie giving Joel the picture of him and Sarah. We talked about that already earlier, but it was a picture that we saw on the game, on the wall, that Tommy went back to get for Joel, hands it to him. Joel doesn't want it. Ellie eventually steals it in the game. And then during this trauma camp, at this trauma camp, she hands Joel the picture after, like, I can't imagine losing somebody you love like that. And he's like, it's okay, Ellie. It's a very tiny moment, but it's a meaningful one.
Yeah.
And he sounds better overall about everything. So it shows like he's healing and he accepts the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire hospital massacre time versus gameplay time. This is funny. Like, this is just a funny topic. I said this to Mike. Hi, Mike, again.
Michael.
And basically, if you are playing this game on like hard or survival or grounded, that will take you hours.
Hospital.
And, the hospital sequence to fight your way through all of those people to get to Ellie, to get her out, to get to the garage, blah, blah, blah. It will take you so long. And in the show, it was like 3.5 minutes. I was like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the end of the TV versus game spoilers. Welcome back to the show. Real quick commentary about the backpack.
Nobody goes in the water with the backpack on.
I fucking love that movie. And that line is so good. Jumanji with Kevin Hart and The Rock. But Ellie does not have her backpack. So Joel did not go and get it at the hospital. And also, and I didn't comment about this either. See, I knew I forgot stuff.
Damn it.
But Ellie asks what drugs. So again, did they just knock Ellie out without telling her?
It's possible.
And then change her clothes? That's such a dirty ass move.
It's possible.
So, but the backpack, she leaves this at the hospital behind because he's not thinking, I'm killing everyone, I have to grab her shit. Totally fine, reasonable, understand, Joel. People have a theory that basically this is how she finds out about what happened. And that's all I can say.
Okay.
But I just wanted to note that the backpack was left behind.
No backpack.
No backpack.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But that is the end of our episode. That is the end of season freaking 1. We did it. We're here. We're done. Kind of. We have a bunch of bonus shows coming and they will be out shortly. But our contact info before Andrew implores a review, and hopefully nobody drops us down after my very divisive comments. Not divisive, but just very strong opinions this episode.
Sure.
Anyway.
Hey, you know?
I mean, you know.
Can't be helped.
It is what it is.
It could be helped, but.
I might cut a bunch anyway. We'll see. So, Instagram. If you would like to follow us over on Instagram, we are over there at TLOU Podcasts. We're over on Twitter at TLOU Podcast. YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search TLOU Podcast. What? Wayfaring Strangers is our other Last of Us podcast where we break the game down in excruciatingly small detail, just as we did with this show. And that will be resuming shortly. We also have a merch store over on bonfire.com. If you just go over there and search TLOU Podcasts, our shit should come up. If not, click the link in the description box for this episode, wherever you're listening to your podcast. We also have a website, TLOU Podcast, or I think it's, do we also have the Last of Us Podcast.com?
Sure do.
I think we have both. You can go and find us over there too. If you'd like to follow me and hang out at all the places, you can do that at Jaded Vader. Andrew is at Dark Driving. Lastly, we have a Twitch now.
What?
Where we will be playing the games and streaming. And when the multiplayer comes out for factions, we're going to be doing that too. So it will just be for The Last of Us content. And if you go to twitch.tv/TLOU podcast and follow us there.
Phew, it's a lot of The Last of Us. It's a lot of lasts. Hey friends, we've reached
critical mass.
We've reached the end. Look at us. Who'd have thought? Not me. Not me. We're fast approaching 4 hours on this one.
Yep.
Who'd have thought? If you have reached this point, it seems like you are probably among our ride or dies. And if that does indeed describe you and you haven't yet, I implore you to go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review or a rating. Or go to Spotify. I saw on Spotify we have over 100 5-star reviews. It's like over 100 reviews. Many of them 5 stars. It's almost 120,
I think.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a huge outpouring of support. But there are also star ratings on Amazon and Pocket Cast or whatever, probably Spreaker and all these other places that I don't even know about that just re-syndicate podcasts. So if you have the time, a free and easy way to help us out is just to leave a star rating and a review. Obviously, we will shout you out. We have a handful of episodes left of this show that will cover high-level stuff, some reader stuff, maybe an interview or two, something like that, if we can figure out schedules and things like that. But regardless, thanks for being along for the ride. We see you in the download numbers. We see you in all of your very cool respective countries hitting our content and getting everything. So this is my way of thanking you. And if you want to thank us, please do so with a review and a rating. It helps a lot. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of our episodes and then revisiting this in a year or 2 years, probably.
It says if they film late 2023 into early 2024, the earliest we might see it is late 2024 to early 2025.
Okay, so we got some time.
We have some time.
Let's make the best of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for all of the reviews and support that you've shown this show since we started. And, I appreciate you all just hanging around with me with my strong opinions strongly held.
There we go. I'm going to take us home. Until we're living in future days and praying for a terminal case of amnesia next time, this is where we leave you to ponder the weight of choice. Bye, 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 bye.
Go play The Last of Us. It's amazing. Even if you're not a gamer, go do it. You'll love it.
Just a whistle.
The Last of Us. The Last of Us. Diddly, diddly, diddly. Right. We are exhausted. It's almost 11 p.m. We did it. We done it. Bye. I stole from Bailey's area in there.